This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney.
Apple's still minting more money than God, right?
Geopolitics front and center for global Wall Street.
With Lisa Mateo on markets.
Stocks are coming off of another record high.
And Michael Barr with news.
U.S. Secretary of State discussed the conflict in Gaza.
The best in economics, finance, investment, and international relations. This is Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Tom Keene, Paul Sweeney, Michael Barr, Lisa Mateo. Thrilled you're with us. Paul, can we make a pact? We're not going to do 100% debate this morning.
No, we're not going to do that.
We're not going to do that.
They'll take care of that tonight.
There's been a Gura sighting. Gura up early.
Yep, down in, I'm sure he's in Buckhead somewhere having a coffee. So.
Yes, he's having, all after the night he had. He should.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
A coffee or two. We will do the debate, a big deal for America. Lots of interest out in the Bloomberg terminal. On that, of course, our coverage at 8 p.m. tonight, but so much more going on. Paul, you mentioned it. The economic data, I mean, I can't count this high, but I'm saying there's 25 or 30 lines on
exactly.
ECO Go in the next 25 hours.
Exactly. We've got some GDP numbers, Tom. We've got initial jobless claims. That'll be interesting for a lot of folks. Again, the consensus is 235,000, kind of in line with kind of what we saw last month. So we'll see how that comes out on the jobs front. And the core PCE tomorrow, Tom.
The smartest thing I heard this morning, Jess Menton.
Yep.
I mean, always smart.
Always.
But it's that bar band that you have down in New Jersey, AI Frenzy.
Yeah.
They're really good.
Yeah.
I mean, AI Frenzy.
Story. Yep.
They play Ellie Goulding like nothing. AI Frenzy. It's out there. AI Frenzy, semiconductors. Lisa will tell you about that. But, it's an interesting day. We're going to do the debate. We're going to talk politics. A lot of good guests scheduled. But nevertheless, we do economics, finance, and investment. We're out on YouTube. Subscribe and search for Bloomberg Podcast to get all of Bloomberg Radio. Good morning, Bloomberg 1130. Around the rain-swept tri-state area.
Wow. That was a nice little storm there.
Nice little storm. Finally, we needed it to
clearing
say
things out.
The least. And on Apple CarPlay across this nation, 20 countries as well. Apple CarPlay safer and better, and Android Auto as well. From the Interactive Broker Studios, the Bloomberg Business Flash, Lisa Mateo.
Good morning. Yeah, futures falling, and this is after Micron sell-off sent this fresh reminder about the risk of bullish AI bets. Micron Technology shares down 5% after disappointing earnings. It's also dragging down a number of its megatech peers, including NVIDIA, which is down about 1.5%. So we have NASDAQ, Dow, and S&P futures all down about 0.1%. We have the two-year yield, 4.75%, little change. The yield on the 10-year, 4.33%, and that is little change. Now, since we talked about the AI rally, if it still has that punch, SoftBank's Vision 2 fund, well, it looks to be behind it. It's investing in U.S.-based AI startup Perplexity AI, $3 billion valuation, part of a $250 million funding round. And then you have Amazon. They were helped by the AI rally. They reached $2 trillion market valuation for the first time ever. Their shares are little change. Just to end off on earnings, we're just getting Walgreens earnings in, slashing its outlook, a tough retail environment. Its shares down about 3%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Thanks so much. Let's talk about that quickly here before we get to Jules Moak. I mean, Walgreens, it's the cusp of America.
Right.
They did a thing in England that was a train wreck.
Yeah.
It's just been a struggle.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know what to say about it.
I don't either. I mean, it's just, you look at the Walgreens Boots Alliance, again, challenge there. We got CVS here also in the U.S. You go into a CVS store or a Walgreens store in Manhattan, everything is behind lock and key.
Yeah, it is.
Everything. It's ridiculous retail experience.
Yeah, I agree. And
wow.
I'm really, I turn around and walk out.
Yeah.
It's like the number one way to go to Amazon. Right now, we're going to go away from the U.S. debate. We'll touch on it here. Gilles Moak is fabulous. With AXA, huge French insurance entity. Gilles Moak for years on Global Wall Street. He's their chief economist. Gilles, if I bring up Le Monde English this morning, which I'm sorry, Gilles, mon français n'est d'accord pas, or something like that. And Gilles, it says, French elections poll, far right holds large lead. Unfair question. Gilles Moak, what happens if Le Pen takes the trophy?
Define winning, because that's the issue to some extent. there are various potential outcomes if the Rassemblement National comes first, because it could be an absolute majority, in which case they would have ample leeway to develop the platform, or it could be relative majority. They would be always, under threat of motion of no confidence from the other groups in parliament, and that would seriously reduce their capacity to develop the platform. So you have to keep that in mind. Now, when we look at the kind of platforms, manifestos which are put on the table, obviously we don't know what's going to be the transformation rate of these manifestos into reality. But basically, what we have on both sides, actually, from the left and from the far right, is a pretty spendthrift fiscal platform. And that's an issue, given the fact that there is no fiscal maneuver to speak of. France has just been downgraded. So,
with the politics that you see in France or in continental Europe, can it affect markets, and can it destabilize the American bull market that we see?
We've already seen some impact. It's measured, I would say. So the French spread has increased. It's now close to the Spanish one. We've seen some contagion to the peripheral countries, but still quite controlled. Honestly, I think that a lot of it is, I would define it as Franco-French, that will trigger a lot of uncertainty on the French side, probably. Now, does it have the sort of systemic consequences for the rest of the Eurozone that we had 10, 15 years ago, when we did not have the kind of circuit breakers that we have now between a more active ECB, the ESM, and so forth, the habit of dealing with crises in the Eurozone. So it's probably controllable and manageable, but it's fair to say that it remains very uncertain. The key difference with 2017 is that the Rassemblement National, the far right, no longer wants to take France out of the Eurozone. So that's obviously a key input in the equation. But they still have some aspects of their platform which would put them on a collision course with some European rules. So it's not, don't think it would be as binary as it would have been a few years ago, but it would still trigger quite some uncertainty.
Gilles, can you give us a sense of, we have the elections, of course, in France, but can you give us a sense of the economic backdrop for the French economy today? How is the economy?
I would define it as, decent, so to speak. France has avoided the kind of small recessions that we see in countries such as Germany. Less reliance on exports to China in particular. Less reliance on manufacturing in general, which has been supportive. Now it's not great. It's positive, but fairly weak. More or less in line with potential on a good quarter. And unfortunately, we've probably already seen some effect of the current uncertainty on spending decisions. We've had a PMI survey reading for June, and a lot of it covered the period when people knew that we would have snap elections, and the PMI declined much more than expected. So it seems that it's already having some impact from a starting point, which I would define, yes, as decent to mediocre.
How about the consumer, the French consumer? Because here in the U.S., the U.S. consumer is generally in pretty good shape. When you look at retail sales, how's the French consumer?
The French consumer loves to save, which is a big difference with the U.S. consumer. And what we've had, and actually it's quite interesting, in France, usually income is quite resilient in times of crisis. When we had the pandemic, or when we had the surge in energy prices because of the Ukraine war, income held up quite well in France. Consumer spending held up quite well because wages in particular were reacting quite quickly, and there was a lot of fiscal spending to help. Now it's okay, it's decent, but you no longer have the sort of very, very strong push on real income. So consumption is, I would define it as well as mediocre.
Yeah. Gilles, thank you so much for joining us today with AXA in Paris here as we go. A whole set of elections up here. Quickly, the calendar, the 30th in days, first election in France, then July 4, I think we can remember that day, the United Kingdom election, And then July 7th, the final French election. Those are two really discrete elections. And then we go immediately to the U.S. election, November 5th. Please, can we just do it their way? I mean, that's all I'd ask.
Yeah, can we do snap elections?
Just please. Yeah. Futures at -9 with our news in New York City. He loves the Mets, Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom, Paul, Lisa. It is debate night for President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. Biden has been out of the public eye in recent days holding mock debates. Trump was asked if he will be treated fairly during tonight's CNN debate.
Am I going to get a fair? Probably not, but it would be very good for CNN. They're having a lot of ratings problems. I think it would be very good for CNN, actually, in terms of its credibility. It'll be interesting to see.
Tonight's presidential debate begins at 9 p.m. Wall Street time. Bloomberg's coverage starts at 8 with a special edition of Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio and television. The U.S. Supreme Court is poised to allow abortions in medical emergencies in Idaho, according to a copy of an opinion that was briefly posted on the court's website. According to Bloomberg Law, it was a mistake, and it was briefly taken down shortly after. The decision would reinstate a lower court order that had ensured hospitals in the state could perform emergency abortions to protect the health of the mother. The posted version indicated the majority will dismiss appeals by Idaho and Republican leaders in the states without resolving the core issues in the case. Two pandas are on their way to the San Diego Zoo from China as part of a 30-year alliance with the China Wildlife Conservation Association. Sending off at the ceremony yesterday in the Chinese province of Sichuan. It was attended by a number of Chinese and American dignitaries, including San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria.
On behalf of the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance and every San Diegan, it is a profound honor to be entrusted with the care and conservation of these two giant pandas, Yun Chuan and Tsingtao.
I still don't know how these poor things survive in the wild. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it. With Bloomberg News Now, I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom Paulies.
Now we're going to talk sweep here. I mean, for those of you across the nation, I mean, it's a layup. The Yankees are the best team in baseball, maybe with the Dodgers, a couple others. The Mets just flat out can't get it done. So, you know, I mean, if Yankees, 2 out of 3 or 3. There it is. Done deal. I mortgaged the house and I'm in trouble. 12-2.
Speaking as a household of Mets fans, we're giggling. I'm not going to lie. Lisa's nostrils are flaring right now. So
it's just, you know, what can you say? I mean, it's the magic of baseball, I guess.
Subway Series?
Subway Series.
Yeah, New York.
But 12-2.
Yeah. Huge storm there in the 5th inning. They weren't even prepared for that.
Yeah.
This huge deluge happened in the 5th inning, and you know they weren't even. It just came out of nowhere, and so that was like an 87-minute delay.
Yeah.
Mets crawl back to 500 ball.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a
Now
lot
they're
of
back
other
in
teams.
the discussion.
A lot of teams are back back in the discussion as well. And you know, I think it's great. I watched some Oriole ball last night. It's just like fun.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing great for the Yankees, I think Aaron Judge hit his 30th home run of the season. So
he's on track to hit, 112?
Yeah, close, something like that.
Something like that. Anyways, Mets sweep the Yankees.
How about that?
I did not have that on the bingo card. I had the debate on the bingo card. There's been a sighting of David Gura. Scheduled, we talked to his people. He's scheduled to be with us in 16 minutes. Futures in -11. Sweeney's looking at the 2-year, 4.75%.
Not too bad.
Real yield, 2.05%. Please stay with us from New York City. Bloomberg Surveillance.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Futures are falling, and this is ahead of the first presidential debate later this evening, also ahead of more economic data out due this morning. Today, we'll get reports on economic growth, durable goods orders, pending sales of existing homes, and weekly unemployment claims. Tomorrow, yes, we're on to the PCE deflator, as well as a read on sentiment. So right now, we have NASDAQ futures down about 0.2%, 42 points. Dow futures down 0.1%, 73 points. S&P futures down 0.1% or 9 points. We have the 2-year yield at 4.74%. That's little change. The yield on the 10-year, 4.32%, and that is little change. I have to point out commodities, Japanese yen, 160.47 against the dollar. We'll go over to Bitcoin, about 0.3% at 61,176. Moving the markets, that would be Levi Strauss down 16%. It reported sales in the latest quarter missed expectations. And then you have fashion retailer H&M falling too, down about 11%. And it blamed bad weather for its profits miss. And then it looks like luxury, well, that's where it's at. You have Gucci owner Kering gaining up 3% after that double upgrade from Bank of America. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
It's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you, Angelina Raskoy, for helping us out yesterday on Paris luxury, including the good people at Gucci and Kering. Again, Bloomberg Business Week, now monthly, with a spectacular issue led by Mr. Arnault.
Yes.
He doesn't own Gucci.
No,
the other
but
guys
he owns
own
everything
Gucci.
else,
But
it seems like.
Thank you to Angelina Raskoy for joining us from Paris yesterday. We just talked to Gilles Moek about the continent of Europe. Let's go stronger here with the United States. Pooja Sriram joins us, Vice President, U.S. Economic Research at Barclays as well. I have no idea, Pooja, how you construct a mid-year review. What's the greatest uncertainty right now?
Hi, thanks, Tom and Paul. Good morning. Look, I think there are quite a bit of uncertainties out there. I think the way you go about it is you look at what the hard data has to tell you, and then you look at a lot of the soft indicators which have not been all that great. So consumer sentiment, the PMIs. And then, you start to ask if there are cracks developing somewhere, because the hard data, to be honest, look quite good so far. And, just to, final thing I'll say there is our read of it so far is that the U.S. economy is still on a reasonably strong footing.
Well, you're tracking, you published 2.3% in the quarter, and right now, Paul, we get a third look at first quarter at some point. But Pooja, just refresh here. Are you still saying this quarter ending June 30, we're going to have real GDP growth of 2.3%?
That's right, Tom. So our tracker is slightly north of 2%. We're tracking real personal spending growth of 2% this quarter. And, one thing that I will point out, and we've, flagged this to investors and clients, is that weakish looking reading in Q1 GDP growth really, masked a lot of strength in the underlying categories. A lot of that weakness came from inventory investment and higher imports. And if you think about it, those are actually, good signs that demand is still pretty strong. We imported a lot in the first quarter. We drew down on inventories. But if you looked elsewhere, whether it's personal consumption spending or, non-business fixed investment, all running pretty strong still. And I think that's the story that we think is likely to continue in the second quarter.
Pooja, I think most folks are kind of focusing tomorrow on the PCE data. We're going to get the core PCE price index year on year for May, up 2.6% as a consensus, down from 2.8% in the prior month here. How do you think about inflation here? How's the U.S. economy in terms of inflation?
Right. So let me start with tomorrow's reading. And, I think we are with consensus. It's going to look weak for May. In fact, our estimate for tomorrow is slightly below consensus. We think core PCE could round up to 0.1% and 2.5% on a year-over-year basis. So that will, look like a fair bit of progress from the prior month. And this is, this has already been foreshadowed by weak CPI and PPI data. So I think, the market broadly gets the sense that tomorrow's number is going to look weak. But if you sort of take a step back and examine where the weakness is coming from, our read is that it's coming from a lot of, volatile categories that tend to bounce around quite a bit. And so we think that the underlying trend for core PCE is actually close to 0.2% on a month-over-month basis. And just taking one more step back to answer your question on where US inflation is, it's definitely lower from where it was last year. But I think we're still struggling a little bit to get core services inflation down even more.
Pooja, your textbooks at Delhi and your textbooks at London School of Economics, not Paul like chapter 11, but like chapter 23, was linking, Pooja, your world at Barclays into the stock market. How do you link your economics into this great bull market that we're seeing in tech?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tom. And luckily we don't have to do all the work. We have a dedicated team of equity analysts and strategists who give us their insights. But the big take is that this bull market and this incredible run of gains that we've had in the stock market have been enormously helpful to US household balance sheets. And I think this is something that most analysts talk about, that US household balance sheets look great. And that's a fact. And then you've got all the boomers who've perhaps entered the market at much more favorable entry points and who are benefiting from the bull run. So it's helped in the way that it's given a lot of stimulus to consumer spending, and I think that's been one of the key factors that's keeping the U.S. consumer quite buffer.
I mean, Paul, help me out here. Pooja, you and I don't have lives, but Paul Sweeney has an actual life. The most important person at Barclays is Dan Levy, who's following GM with an overweight. Because everybody's selling their NVIDIA. Pooja's selling her NVIDIA, and she's probably buying, something like a Rivian or, something Pooja can slide into. But I'm sorry, Paul, all the new cars out there are wealth. They gotta be.
I mean,
you're not doing a monthly on one of those things. I got in the Bentley today, Pooja. There's a guy with an Aston Martin.
Nice.
In my building. What's
Very
that
nice.
puppy cost?
Exactly.
Get one more in here.
That's some real wealth. Hey, Pooja, we're going to get some initial jobless claims today. Give us your thoughts there at Barclays. How you guys are thinking about this U.S. labor market here?
Yeah, so we think the U.S. labor market is still doing pretty fine. It has come into better balance this year, and that's how we phrase it. It's a moderation, not an enormous amount of slowing. And I will borrow this line that FOMC member Mary Daly used earlier this week, and she said, "Look, the labor markets look good, but they're not frothy." I think that's the sentiment that we have as well. And the claims number, yes, they've been ticking up. Our own forecast for this morning is about 240,000 for claims. But I think it's very consistent with a market where we're seeing a slight moderation in labor demand, and nothing that is too worrisome to us.
Pooja, thank you so much. Pooja Sriram with us, Vice President at Barclays for Economic Research. Paul Sweeney, Ian Lingen publishing moments ago, he is focused, as you were, on initial jobless claims. So that's a key data point today.
We're going to get that at 8:30. We're going to get that at 8:30 today, Tom. Wall Street time, jobless claims looking at about 235,000. A little bit higher than what we've been seeing over the past 4, 5, 6 months. We had that 238,000 last month here, but we'll see how that comes in here because again, we've got unemployment of, just about 4%.
I tell you, when Ian Lingen starts writing about daily stochastics,
oh boy,
it's 7:24 Wall Street time.
Yeah, it's a little
It
early.
ain't happening, Ian. You got to save the daily stochastics for after 9 a.m. Ian Lingen, BMO Capital Markets. We'll get him in here as we can. There is a debate tonight. The schedule, is there a network not carrying the debate?
I don't know how this is all.
I think the Golf Channel.
Right,
the Golf Channel has it.
They're
now,
bailing
the
on that.
problem is, Lisa, help me out here. CNN has a countdown clock. I mean, they're like 14 hours away, and they're counting this puppy down. Should we have a countdown clock like the economic data or
Maybe.
a countdown clock to Lisa's newspaper
Exactly.
report?
7:48 Wall Street time.
That might be nice.
Can we get out front?
We need the
I
countdown
love when
clock.
you pebble me.
Oh,
You're
this is going to be a good
pebbling?
segment.
I have
Oh,
no
you're
idea
gonna
what that
kill
is.
me.
Parents are pebbling kids.
Pebbling
you
kids?
want to hear about this one coming
Yeah,
up.
it's just we'll do that in 15 minutes. Hey, stay with us on Economics, Finance, Investment on YouTube, Bloomberg Surveillance.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Futures, well, pointing to a lower open right now. NASDAQ futures and Dow futures both down 0.2%. S&P futures down 0.1% or 8 points. We head over to the 2-year yield, 4.75%, little change. The 10-year yield, 4.32%, and that is little change. Looking at commodities, we have spot gold higher at $2,314 an ounce. Brent crude, $85 a barrel. WTI crude, $81 a barrel. We have some moves in energy. SM Energy in talks to buy XCL Resources. It's a deal that values the Utah oil and gas producer $3 billion. SM Energy, their shares down nearly 1%. And shares of GSK are falling. ADRs down nearly 2%. U.S. health officials recommending restricting its RSV shot to those who are older and more at risk. And finally, sources say Elon Musk's SpaceX will sell insider shares at a higher than expected $112 billion at a tender offer. It's valuing the company at a record $210 billion. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Lisa Mateo, thanks so much. She was at Bar Margaux last night with a television bigwigs. Gur's probably doing job interviews.
Yeah, well,
CNN. I mean, CNN's there.
Big stuff down. Who knows what's going on?
They're all there. Gur's holding court at the Four Seasons last night.
And
he's got the backdrop here on YouTube. I mean, for those of you out on YouTube, search and subscribe Bloomberg Podcast. It's a nice backdrop. Where he really is Ash Coffee.
Yeah.
And David likes the Vietnamese egg coffee the best with the blowtorched foam top.
Wow.
Joining us now from Atlanta, Mr. Gura. David, serious events tonight. And what I find bizarre is it feels like a one-off. Seriously, when you were at Bar Margaux last night, does the media feel like this is a one-off debate, or is there a continuum into the summer?
Well, first of all, thank you for the bar recommendation, Tom. The burger was delicious at Bar Margaux, as I think you predicted it would be. But scuttlebutt among those who were at the bar there is that this campaign does feel weird or different from campaigns past. Of course, this debate happening much earlier than they have historically. Yes, there's another one scheduled to take place in September after the two political conventions, but there is a weirdness or a novelty to the debate schedule this time of year, and I think that is coming across. I think it comes across in how seemingly high stakes this is. Yes, I think there are a lot of people who have calcified views about who they're going to support, but a lot of people are tuning in just to sort of either have those reinforced or see what happens tonight.
To begin the parlor game, does the president speak to the middle of America, or does he reaffirm his progressive left?
He's going to try to speak to the middle of America. I think that the difficulty for him tonight is encapsulating all that he's accomplished over the last few years and looking ahead to the future and doing that in a very crystalline clear way. I think that that's a challenge for him. It's a challenge for the former president as well. Donald Trump is fond of talking about sort of what happened 4 years ago and 4 years before that. I think it's incumbent on him in this debate to sort of lay out a vision for the next 4 years as well, something that he just doesn't have a habit of doing. It's a little more difficult for him to do. So we'll see with both of them how much they're able to sort of crystallize and put together that vision. And I think, as I said, Tom, they want to speak to the undecided sliver of the electorate. There are plenty of people who are supporting each of these candidates, but there are still those who are undecided or on the fence or might not be, that adamant about going to the polls in November. That's who they want to reach tonight.
David, just refresh our memory. Why are we having this poll so early relative to November 5th?
It's something that President Biden wanted to have, and we had that kind of challenge on tandem with that, with Donald Trump saying he would debate Joe Biden anywhere, anytime, under any circumstances. So that's why it's happening now. But again, talking about the novelty of this moment, for the last 30 years, we've had this nonpartisan debate commission that has developed a schedule for these debates, come up with the rules for how they work. They've largely been the same year after year after year. This is the first time in a long time that we've had a television network really calling all the shots, deciding how it's going to look, what the questions are going to be like, deciding that there are going to be commercial breaks. There'll be two of them during the course of this debate. So it's new territory here, and we'll see how that plays. I think I mentioned this the last time I was on the show, that the head of CNN wants this to harken back to 1960, to sort of what we saw between Nixon and Kennedy when, it was a major TV event, but the focus really was on the two candidates.
So what will the character of the questions be? I mean, everything's on, they can't talk if they're not called upon and that. But David, do you think we will get a different character of questions because Mr. Thompson of CNN wants it to be a Nixon-Kennedy redux?
We know very little from CNN about what the questions are going to be like and sort of how much will focus on foreign policy or the economy, but I think you're picking up on something. They've looked back on the last two times these candidates have debated, and at least one of those was, I think, an unmitigated disaster. Chris Wallace, no complaints about him, and of course his long reputation as a journalist. But it was like herding cats during that debate, and we remember sort of the way that Donald Trump would interject, and he had a very difficult time kind of keeping them on focused on the questions that he was asking and getting concrete responses from them. Clearly, CNN has, I'm sure, watched that tape numerous times, and it's going to shape sort of how they ask the questions tonight during the debate.
So in a swing state, I'm going to pick Pennsylvania just because the Pirates are doing better, no other reason. Phillies are phenomenal. But a swing state, who in Pennsylvania is Trump talking to? Who in Pennsylvania is Biden talking to?
they're talking to the same people, and those are sort of working class people. And like Pennsylvania is interesting too, because you've got this huge population of workers still in the steel business, and this is a group of people that Joe Biden claims to come from and wants to embrace. Donald Trump, of course, has appealed to them as well through his tariffs policy. So I think you bring that up for kind of like a random reason, of course, how the pirates are doing, but I think that it's actually a very important state because it's going to be a really fought over battleground state for these two candidates going forward. And we'll see how much these messages resonate. I think it is a state in which there probably aren't as many swing voters as you would have in others.
David, is there a sense that which candidate has the more to lose, maybe even win here tonight? I mean, who's got more on the line tonight, do you think?
My sense is that's Joe Biden. That's the current president. And so there has been so much raised about him on issues of style. We can talk about each of their age, 81 and 78. There will be sort of speculating, how's he going to do? The same thing happened around the State of the Union debate, of course. There's this sense that, the bar has been laid so low for Joe Biden, it shouldn't be very difficult for him to clear it. I think what's interesting for me to watch, Paul, is how much we move beyond those questions of style to get into substance. And we've kind of been inured to or now understand the way that Donald Trump approaches these debates. He can kind of go off script and be Donald Trump, and people generally forgive him who support him.
What's after this debate? I mean, it's so nuts this time around. I honestly don't know the answer to the question. David, on the Rose Show, which you're part of, what's the next thing?
There are two watch parties happening here in Atlanta, so we know that President Biden is going to go to that after the debate and greet his supporters there. Donald Trump supporters are having one as well at Kelly Loeffler, the former Georgia senator's house here in Atlanta, and the four kind of leading vice presidential candidates that Donald Trump has talked about and we've seen floated in the press. So J.D. Vance, Tim Scott, Marco Rubio, Doug Burgum, they're going to be there. So it is nutty. I mean, it's like that show will continue. And then come tomorrow, we're going to see President Trump go to Virginia to hold a rally with Governor Glenn Youngkin there. And then Joe Biden is going to go to North Carolina, where I'm from, with his wife, and then onward to fundraisers this weekend in the Hamptons. So nice. Tomorrow to battleground states, and then to more fundraising on the heels of that.
So Gura goes from Atlanta to the Hamptons.
Yeah,
Is that what
right. I was going to say North, drive up 85 all the way up now, all the way up to 95.
I look at you, David. It's absolutely original. Is what I mean. I'd almost want to see it in black and white.
Yeah,
to take it back to the '60s. One more thought, David. You mentioned foreign policy. Come on, it doesn't matter in an election. Do we get one question on foreign policy?
I think we'll get a few. I mean, something that we haven't really gotten concrete answers from former President Trump on is his policy toward Israel, as we've seen this war unfold over these last many months. I expect that these two moderators are going to push them on at least that issue in foreign policy a little bit. They're not going to talk about daily stochastics. I know that.
No.
Oh, thank you.
Only here, Tom.
Only here on Bloomberg Surveillance. David Gura from Ash Coffee in Atlanta. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciated. Of course, our coverage, 9 o'clock, what is that about? We should ask young Gura about that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like NBA Finals. Nobody watches it. Kids can't stay up.
No kids can't stay up for that. But I mean
just for California?
Can the candidates stay up for that? We'll see.
Well, that's not funny.
That's not funny. That isn't funny.
9 o'clock, and we begin at 8 o'clock with Joe Matthew, Kaylee Lines, David Gura, and
Special edition Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio and TV tonight.
And we'll take a different twist than so many other networks. I think you'll enjoy some of the twists, particularly Joe Matthew. I think he just, he's like, okay, enough of the tomfoolery. What are we really?
Right, he's an insider down there. He's got a feel for it.
Doing as well. Hey, how about the markets, folks? The futures are off a little bit. Is it the Micron effect?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I thought the numbers were okay, but again, it just the expectations were so high that, and that's, I tell you, Tom, that's the risk in this market short term. Very short term. If you get an NVIDIA guide number at some point over the next couple quarters that disappoints, that's going to be a challenge.
Japan intervention, the dollar ebbs away fractionally. Yen 160.52. I'll call that stable. But euro plays games, maybe because of the French elections. And euro yen is a stunning 171.79. Well out over 171.00. That's a weaker yen.
Yep.
And I'm almost at the point where if I'm institutions in Japan, I'm trying to get to Sunday evening our time Monday morning
their time. Dollar yen 160.51.
We're
We're not. Yeah, exactly, Tom. And we were at this 160 level 4 or 5 weeks ago, and the Bank of Japan came in. We'll see what they do here.
With our news in New York City, Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom, Paul, Lisa. Last-minute preparations are being made ahead of tonight's CNN presidential debate between President Biden and former President Trump. This will be the first televised debate between a sitting and former president. It is also coming much earlier than usual and is being run by CNN instead of the nonpartisan commission that had controlled such events for over 30 years. We have special coverage of the CNN presidential debate beginning at 8 p.m. Wall Street time with a special edition of Balance of Power with Joe Matthew and Kaylee Lyons in Washington and David Gura in Atlanta. The Supreme Court has a handful of cases still undecided, including whether former President Donald Trump is immune from criminal prosecution in the election interference case against him. Bloomberg's Amy Morris has a preview.
We're waiting to hear from the High Court about some major undecided cases. Donald Trump argues he has presidential immunity from prosecution for acts taken in office. A former police officer is challenging the obstruction charges brought against hundreds of people who took part in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. And the most significant Supreme Court case in decades on homelessness centers on whether people can be banned from sleeping outdoors when there's not enough shelter space. And there are other cases pending, including on the opioid epidemic, air pollution, and securities fraud. The court releases its findings at 10 this morning. In Washington, Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Supreme Court is poised to allow abortions in medical emergencies in Idaho. Bloomberg Law reports that's according to a copy of an opinion that was briefly posted on the court's website. It was quickly taken down after it was mistakenly posted. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul, Lisa.
The major news organizations, and particularly CBS and NBC that invented this racket, if they took away certain images of their archives. Now, I get it. Comedy is not those images seared in our memories from our youth, but Paramount Global yesterday... it's so important, folks. The official line is the takedowns came as part of a broader website strategy across Paramount. They eliminated the archives of all of their Paramount entertainment, including Comedy Central.
And I think, I think they're saying basically they're keeping this content for themselves for all their streaming services, and they don't want a lot of this content out there on their various internet sites.
Yeah, there's confusion about it.
Yeah, and it's just saying, I think it's basically just saying, we're taking all this stuff out of the public domain and keeping it for our, I guess, our various streaming services.
But then they use the word purged. I don't know what purged means.
I don't know.
I just can't believe they would put a delete button on, say, Jon Stewart, pick your talent. But it's profound. And Paul, it goes to the uncertainty you chronicled.
Yeah.
Over the last 2 years.
Yep.
It's just extraordinary.
I think everybody's at Paramount and like everyone's are trying to figure out how do they maximize the value of all this content.
That's important. Thank you, Deadline, for that report. We'll look to Lucas Shaw for further coverage. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Futures falling. NASDAQ futures leading the losses down 0.2%, 41 points. We have Dow futures and S&P futures down 0.1%. The 2-year yield, 4.76%. That's up 1 basis point. The yield on the 10-year, 4.33%, and that is little changed. We head over to spot gold higher at $2,315 an ounce. Brent crude $85 a barrel. WTI crude $81 a barrel. To earnings we go. Want to head back to Walgreens, down 15%. The company's cut its profit forecast for the full year, but it's also planning to shut down some more underperforming U.S. stores. That's affecting shares of its rival CVS Health. That's now down about 3%. And later this afternoon, we move on to Nike. Analysts at Bloomberg Intelligence, they say the first half of Nike's new fiscal year could be volatile. Shares, though, this morning are little changed. And this may come as a shock, but apparently people don't go to McDonald's for healthier options. At a recent conference,
I'm listening.
The chain's U.S. chief said that nationwide tests of plant-based meats didn't go so well, and that people don't want salads. They're focused more on chicken. There you go.
There you go.
I can't get a salad at McDonald's.
When was the last time you were at a McDonald's?
I get it's been a while,
Nixon
but when I do, I get
president.
the salads, and I love their salads. They're so good, but they're getting rid of them.
It's un-American. It's just painful.
Again,
Sparta took me. Said we're going to lunch. I figure Michael's or
right, of course,
La Grue, something like that. No, we go around the corner to McDonald's.
living
I
large.
had 2 cheeseburgers. I had no ketchup, so you get them made fresh.
Okay.
Pro tip.
Yeah, okay,
You can
very
use
good.
that,
look at that.
every day. Paul, we got a massive drawdown. Thank you, Sam Rowe, doing great work out there. Value add. Sam Rowe looked at TK.
I like that.
He's doing, he's got the CF. He's like the real deal.
Yep.
And anyways, he's talking about this massive drawdown, 0.2%.
Right, exactly.
He had a great article like the only correction we have is negative 5.x%.
Right, that was April.
Since time began.
Yep.
I mean,
So
can we admit we're in a bull market?
it feels like it. I mean, we've got a Fed that at some point
Yeah.
is going to start cutting rates. We get decent earnings. Why not?
We need to do some pebbling.
Yep.
Now, a look at the front pages. What's making news around the world? Your daily roundup of today's headlines from major publications.
The Lisa Mateo Show, the front page is brought to you by Interactive Brokers. Interactive Brokers. They charge dollar margin loan rates from 5.83% to 6.83%. Rates subject to change. Learn more at ibkr.com/compare. Lisa, what do you have?
Okay, the latest Census Bureau stats came out, so I want to point out something, the growing number of Hispanics. This is what stood out to the Wall Street Journal. They have this great breakdown of it. U.S. Hispanic population grew by 1.16 million to more than 65 million in the recently estimated year. So that accounts for about 70% of overall population growth in that period. Now, about 1/3 of that gain, it was due to migrants entering the U.S. The rest came from Hispanic births outnumbering deaths. But what stands out is that growth helped offset the shrinking non-Hispanic population, especially in places like Philadelphia, Milwaukee was another one, Salt Lake City, Louisville, Kentucky, several counties in Florida.
Yeah.
And the breakdown, the biggest part of that was Mexicans, and then the Venezuelan population is growing the fastest.
Yeah, that was a terrific article, and it really harkens to changes. I remember pushing 20 years ago, somebody said 2045 is a tip point demographically for America. I think it's pulled in, and you're going to hear it in tonight's debate.
I tell you what, about 30 years ago, I was part of a group that took Univision television public here in the United States. The demographics you just mentioned were the exact same demographics we talked about 30 years ago.
Really? So
Exact same.
Okay.
It's just trends in place.
Yep.
And it's a really, really thorough article. That was by the Journal? Was it?
Yes, by the
Yeah,
Wall
see
Street
that?
Journal. Really
17% of the U.S. population is Hispanic, 18%, something like that.
Yeah.
It's,
And it goes right to tonight's debate. Next.
Exactly.
Most definitely. Congestion pricing, have to talk about
They're going
this
to talk
again.
about that in the debate tonight.
I don't know if they will, but now the MTA is saying because of halting it, the congestion pricing plan, they're saying it's going to have to cut its capital plan, $16.5 billion in subway upgrades. That's what they're pointing to. How that breaks down, they plan to make subway stations more accessible to riders with disabilities. Now they can't do that. Repairs to infrastructure, that's like a century old. You have the expansion of the 2nd Avenue subway line could be affected, and also other projects as well. So they're saying because this was paused, now you have, where are we going to get the money to do all these things we want to do?
Has anybody seen a body count of how many jobs are lost or how many jobs won't be formed because of this decision? To me, it's a big number. I don't know what the number is.
Yeah, well, yesterday we did that story with that one group saying that about, it was 100,000 jobs. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows where those numbers come from? I mean, yeah, if you're for the MTA, they've got to figure out a way here to, A, balance the budget, and B, find some capital to continue to put up the maintenance capex, if nothing else.
I don't know. I have no pearls of wisdom here.
I don't know. No.
Other than, folks, when you go up the roads here, when I leave the building like at 5:30, there's those big cameras that John Tucker talks about.
Who's paying for those?
They're
dark.
there.
Yep.
There's no other way to put it.
Yep.
Next.
All right, we talked about Amazon, the $2 trillion market valuation, right? But some new data is showing that more people are watching Amazon Prime Video. Okay, this is an Evercore ISI study. It did it of Amazon users. So Amazon's Prime Video engagement, 80%. 50% polled said they're watching more than before. Sports is helping, a big thing. They said 58% of Prime members watched at least part of that. They had the NFL Thursday night football.
Okay, yep.
But they said why it's important is because it's helping keep people paying the $139 a year for Amazon Prime.
Is that how much Amazon Prime costs
Yes, it
me?
is. It is.
I
Believe
have no
me.
idea.
I know that.
If you'd asked me, I would have said $99.
No, it's like
It's 40% higher than that?
It's crazy. And so because they get the people who want the Prime, they get more people too to buy on Amazon because they're getting competition from places like Temu and all that other kind of stuff. But it also shows that Amazon has this big opportunity, which Paul was talking about, in advertising.
Yep.
So it shows the potential
Brian
that they have
Weezer
there.
was brilliant yesterday.
Very good. Excellent.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, folks, one of the reasons to be part of Bloomberg podcasts is you get to see everything on Bloomberg Radio, including extensive comments from Mr. Weezer about this. My amateur take is Prime Video's got a new spirit. It's got a new energy because they're not apologizing about ads. They just show ads.
Right.
All the rest are tiptoeing around,
Right.
as Brian alluded to.
And they have the original movies. I mean, they have a lot of movies that I watch just for Amazon.
Yeah.
I mean, after I watch it, I'm like, why did I watch that? But but they do offer the original
And they
movies there.
and quite frankly, if they ever really wanted to get into this market, i.e. the entertainment market, they could get in a huge way. I mean, I think Amazon Prime is good. It's fine. And, it's a good streaming service. But if they ever want to really get into it, they could.
Next.
All right, we're talking about pebbling. And if you do this with your children, it's a new trend. If you think about it, this was in Parents Magazine. It's great because pebbling is used.
Cover every month.
What is pebbling?
Pebbling is kind of used to describe a courting, like in a relationship when you're kind of courting someone.
Okay.
It came actually from penguins in Antarctica because they present rocks to each other when they want to court one another. This is the origin of it. But now parents are doing it with their kids. They're courting them with communication. So how they're doing it, if you're having a tough time talking with your kids, they're texting them funny memes. Like they're sending them a link to a song that reminds them.
We call those dad jokes.
Yeah. You can send
Which
them
they
dad
hate.
jokes, okay? You can put up little Post-it notes on the mirror,
You're kidding me.
inspirational
You're killing
quotes.
me.
Here's the
Do
reason
you
why.
do this at the Mateos? Can
I
you see
do.
her? Can you see her Saturday morning on the way to Costco? She's in the kitchen, screaming in the West Wing, "If you don't empty the dishwasher, I'm gonna kill you."
They get those text messages too. Yes, please empty the dishwasher. But it's also about sending, like if they have a game, like good luck, you're gonna do great, love you. Like sending those positive little things to your kids because it actually, experts say, it sends off this little signal to your brain, releases dopamine. Okay, so there's some science
Is this
behind
like
it.
in Lisa's new contract? We have to do this garbage. Is that what this is? Is this the sensitive Lisa?
I love it because
Paul, what do you
I like
think?
the tough Lisa. No junk food in my household. That's the Lisa Matei I like.
that's the one too. But nowadays, parents have a tough time talking to their kids. So because of technology. So this is one way for them to kind of break the ice so that you become cool again, maybe.
Do you put Post-it notes on their mirrors?
I did like twice, maybe.
Can I just
Sometimes it
state I
works.
can't get to Afterthoughts mirrors because there's so much Sephora investment
That
in
is
between.
true. That is true.
So do we get this 5 days a week from you?
Yes, you
Wow, there you
have the
go.
pleasure of getting this.
We're gonna get this
5 days a
sponsored
week.
coming. I'm gonna get this sponsored.
I'm telling you, I bet people are talking on the chat about Pebbling if they do it with their kids. I'm telling you, it's going to be a big
It's a
thing.
Okay, they weren't pebbling when Jefferson Airplane put out the greatest album ever, Serialistic Pillow. No pebbling allowed. Good morning.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney.
Why are we upset if we're creating jobs?
Inflation's still a thing out there for the everyday consumer.
With Lisa Mateo on markets.
The economic calendar jam-packed today.
And Michael Barr with news.
Tensions between the U.S. and China have heated up even more.
The best in economics, finance, investment, and international relations. This is Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio.
Can we figure out a countdown clock for radio? I think, on Bloomberg 1130 and at New York, CNN just put it up. 13 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds to the debate. Are you kidding me?
Exactly.
13 hours.
Oh, boy.
12 hours from now. Joe Matthew, Kaylee Lyons will be giving you some real perspective with some really less rote guests. They've got a twisted set of guests that'll give you some perspective on truly an historic event.
And then we've got David Gurr down in Atlanta at the Cafe Margot.
He was brilliant on the last hour.
Okay.
I don't mean to make light of it. Yeah, we do jokes and all that, but this is serious stuff.
Yep. It is. It's so early in the campaign cycle to have a debate here. You wonder what the impact will be on in November, but
they talk about Mark Thompson at CNN, alluding back to the 60s debate. What was Kennedy's age? What was Nixon's age at the debate that defined America? And now we've got, what 78 and 81? Am I right on that?
I think you're right on that.
And it's just going to be,
How
there
did we
it
get
is.
here?
How did we get here? We got here by doing economics, finance, investment, and less politics. Let's do that.
That's good.
Japan hasn't intervened. Yields are stable, and I got a VIX at 12.70. Paul Sweeney, that's a bull market.
That's a bull market. A VIX that low says people are pretty comfortable with what they're seeing out there.
Hugely comfortable.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, for a huge part of America. And again, in the debate tonight, they will address people who are less than comfortable. Bloomberg Surveillance this day of debate, brought to you by Cohn Resnick Advisory Assurance Tax. They're industry advisors. They can customize solutions to help your business create value and increase resilience. Visit cohnresnick.com/advisory. Thank you, Cohn Resnick, for your support of all that we do. On YouTube, search, subscribe, Bloomberg Podcast. People still trying to figure out how to find us. You go into Google, Bing.
Is that right?
You go into Bing.
Okay.
You search Bloomberg Podcasts on YouTube, and there it is. And you click on it, and it's growing every day. It's growing. It's huge for the big events, like inflation tomorrow.
Right.
We'll do a bigger number because of market moving and all that on Android Auto and on Apple CarPlay as well. With our Bloomberg Business Flash, Lisa Mateo.
Good morning. Futures falling as after Micron sell-off. What did you call it, Tom? The Micron effect? Maybe that's what's happening here. All right, so now we have NASDAQ futures down 0.1%, S&P futures down 0.1%, Dow futures down about 0.2%. Now let's get to Micron. Right now their shares are down 6% after that disappointing earnings report, but it's also dragging down a lot of its megatech peers, including NVIDIA, down more than 1.5%. We go to the bond market. The 2-year yield, 4.76%. That's little change. The yield on the 10-year, 4.33%. And that is little change. Now, since we talk about the AI rally, SoftBank Vision Fund 2, well, it looks to be behind it because it's investing in U.S.-based AI startup Perplexity AI at a $3 billion valuation, part of a $250 million funding round. And the AI rally, well, it's working for Amazon. The company reached a $2 trillion market valuation for the first time ever. Shares are up about 0.5%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Thanks so much. For Global Wall Street, this is our interview of the day on what is the foundation of the markets: bills, notes, and bonds. Ian Lingdon is at BMO Capital Markets. We're thrilled he could join us. Definitive on American Wall Street and, of course, Red Worldwide as well. Ian, your arch call is for higher prices and lower yields. Is that arch call still in place?
It certainly is. And I think that everything that we have seen play out over the course of the last several months really confirms that. We have inflation starting to moderate in line with what the Fed would want to see. We're seeing break-evens drift lower, and we're seeing nominal yields follow suit. Now, we are entering a period of uncertainty. We have inflation on the horizon, as well as next week's jobs report. But I am still constructive on the Treasury market. I think we end the year in a lower rate environment. And at the end of the day, it's a Fed credibility trade, and I have confidence in the Fed at this point.
Confidence in the Fed. Confidence in the Fed to stand pat, or confidence to begin cutting maybe as soon as September?
Confidence primarily in the Fed's ability and commitment to get inflation back to that 2% target. Now, I think that does translate through to a September rate cut, But if inflation doesn't conform with what the Fed needs to see, that kicks it forward to December. But at the end of the day, they are going to start normalizing rates, and that will ultimately be supportive for the market as a whole.
So next, it's interesting here. I mean, talk to us about inflation here. Why, in your mind, is the Fed so fixated on that 2% rate? Where did that come from?
So there's a long history of 2% being a central bank's target. It's not just the Fed. Other central banks have a 2% or roughly a 2% target. What I think the current fixation is really comes down to Fed credibility. Perhaps something has changed as a result of the pandemic and inflation is at least momentarily structurally higher. Yep. Even if the Fed were to believe that, they need to get us back to 2% for credibility's sake, if nothing else. And when we think about even the FOMC statement, they have 2% referenced 4 times in the most recent statement.
Yeah.
That's a clear message to the market that they're holding 2% and they're getting us back there.
Is tomorrow's inflation statistic a key catalyst? You mentioned claims as being important here in 24 minutes, but is it really about an inflation number sneaking us up on us tomorrow?
Well, I think that the core PCE number, and this is data for the month of May, is largely known given what we have in CPI and PPI. But we do know that it's the Fed's favored measure, and we're expecting the year-over-year number to downshift to 2.6%. So I do think that it will be a tradable event. But let us not forget, it's month end, it's quarter end, and it's also the eve of the first round of the French election, which has been creating uncertainty, at least in the Treasury market.
Okay, so Ian, I'm asking for a woman who's putting stickers on her kid's window to Pebble. Are you telling me as a tradable event, Lisa Mateo should load the boat on the 10-year today, price up, yield down?
I think that between now and this weekend, 10-year yields will be lower. And I think that this will mark an important departure point for that drift back to the bottom of the range. Yep. And we're targeting 418.
I'm in tears. It's like Ian Lingon's pebbling with Lisa Mateo.
Exactly.
Lisa, there you go.
Thank you.
Forget about Costco, load the boat in the 10-year.
In the 10-year.
Pebbling with Ian Lingon.
Ian, talk to us about the U.S. consumer here. I mean, we hear a lot about a bifurcated consumer, and that certainly appears to be the case. How do you think about the U.S. consumer, and maybe how do you think the Fed thinks about the consumer?
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind that the Fed is not the central bank to the top quartile or the bottom quartile of consumers. The Fed's the central bank to the entire economy. And so Powell has said on a number of occasions that inflation is hurting the bottom quartile in particular, but we're now starting to see that move up to the bottom 3 quartiles, one could argue. So I do think that the Fed is cognizant of the fact that inflation is becoming a problem for the average consumer. We're seeing an increase in the pace of defaults, of serious defaults, still low on an outright level, but that's a bit concerning. And then consumption overall, retail sales, disappointing. And that's one of the reasons I think one of the surprises in tomorrow's number could actually come from the personal spending data as opposed to inflation. If there's any softness there, that will reinforce the idea that we're seeing more fallout in the real economy.
Ian Lingon, thank you so much. BMO Capital Markets, important comments there. I mean, Paul, he doesn't mince words.
Nope.
I mean, he's just like, let's go.
Yep.
We've come down.
Yields down.
You were at near 5% in the 2-year.
Yep.
And we come down, and clearly he's saying price up, yield down.
Yes, he is. That's a consistent call there from Ian Lingon.
It's consistent, but really reaffirmed there. Lisa, did you take notes on that?
Exactly.
You have to.
Yeah, Michael Barr never pebbles with me.
I watch the Flintstones.
Yeah. There you go.
Exactly. Save us with our news in New York City, Fred Flintstone.
Thank you very much, Tom, Paul, and Lisa. Last-minute preparations are being made ahead of tonight's CNN presidential debate between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. It is also coming much earlier than usual and is being run by CNN instead of the nonpartisan commission that had controlled such events for over 30 years. We get more with Bloomberg's David Gura.
The head of CNN is saying he wants the debate to harken back to what we saw in 1960, that first and pivotal debate between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. Wants to sort of pare down all of the artifice, just focus on what these two have to say. We'll see if Jake Tapper and Dana Bash will be able to do that.
Bloomberg's David Gura. We have special coverage of the CNN presidential debate beginning at 8 p.m. Wall Street time with a special edition of Balance of Power with Joe Matthew and Kaylee Lyons in Washington and David Gura in Atlanta. Armored vehicles rammed into the doors of Bolivia's government palace Wednesday as President Luis Arce said the country faced an attempted coup and urged people to mobilize. He called for democracy to be respected in a message on his X account. In a move to improve healthcare and technology, Crescent Regional Hospital in Lancaster, Texas, debuted the HoloBox. The holographic technology, originally from the Netherlands, gives doctors a more three-dimensional visit than telehealth visits do. Doctors at Crescent enter a dedicated room with a camera, mic, and monitor, and then appear to his patient in a life-size projection. Raji Kumar is the CEO of Crescent Regional Hospital, calls it a groundbreaking healthcare event that can be used in pre-op, post-op, and even emergency room consults.
Our doctors on the north side of town don't have to drive 30 miles to see one of their patients. So they can just hop into the studio and they can have a consult.
Hospital administrators say it will also cut down on wait times for visits. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom Paul, Lisa.
Thanks to Chris Whalen with us yesterday. Yeah. He retweets out Jim Lucier, who's fabulous at Capital Alpha. He was on Bloomberg Television. And this is a Lucier quote. Quote, I noted that the Biden team has actually built its own debate stage replica in an aircraft hangar at Camp David. Clearly someone is trying to practice too hard. That's Mr. Lucier's opinion, not ours. But I think the story here, and of course there's hindsight at midnight or 11 p.m. tomorrow when they're doing the spin stuff, but two radically different approaches to this debate.
And it's, I think, Biden is old school. He knows the value of a debate, and he's been out of pocket for 4 or 5 days here preparing for this debate, whereas President Trump does a little bit more just kind of off the cuff. That's kind of where his strength.
Off the cuff.
It's where his strength has been historically. So he knows what he's doing. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm interested just as a media person to see the ratings tonight.
I want to take 40 seconds here, and Michael Barr, thank you. You have covered a trial in Russia. It's going on right now.
Terrible.
And it is the video, folks, if you haven't seen it, is just difficult, to say the least.
I still don't know what to make of it, and what's going on. And you got
Evan Gershkovich, the Wall Street Journal.
Yes, Evan Gershkovich, and he's in that glass cage, and I have a hard time watching that.
Yeah, I do too.
What he's going through, he got arrested in the Urals, and for what Russia is saying, and
it's just getting a little long.
Yeah,
it's getting a little long. We will continue across Bloomberg News, including all of our London-based coverage over to Moscow on that difficult trial. Futures -9 from New York City. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Good morning.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
In the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Futures falling, and this is ahead of the first presidential debate later this evening. You've been hearing about it. It's also ahead of more economic data. We're talking about reports on economic growth, durable goods orders, pending sales of existing homes, and weekly unemployment claims. Then tomorrow we go on to the PCE deflator, as well as a read on sentiment. Right now we have NASDAQ futures, S&P futures down 0.1%, Dow futures down 0.2%. We have the 2-year yield at 4.75%, little change. The yield on the 10-year at 4.33%, and that is little change. To commodities, I have to point out Japanese yen 160.47 against the dollar. We have Bitcoin, that's up about 0.5% at 61,258. Moving the markets, Levi Strauss down 15%, reported sales. The latest quarter missed expectations, and also fashion retailer H&M. Their H&M is falling too. They're down about 11%. It blamed bad weather for its profit miss. Go figure. And so a lot of people, maybe they're just trading the Levi's for fast fashion H&M clothes for Gucci. That's what they want. Its owner Kering gaining nearly up 4%. I had a double upgrade from Bank of America. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
She's gifted. I mean, how do you get someone to Segui from Levi's into Gucci?
Are you I'm a Levi's person, not a Lee, not a Wrangler. Levi's.
I have Levi's. Yeah.
You're Levi's.
I'm
okay.
Levi's. $25 a pair. That's what I got it for.
Is that what it is? Okay.
They were
See,
on
Matt
sale.
Miller gets these specialty designer jeans that he gets from I don't know where, Germany or Italy, or I don't know where he gets them. But
it's to go with the cowboy boots.
yes, and the jackets.
And the jackets.
So anyway, so I don't think Tom owns a pair of jeans.
Of Levi's?
No, just jeans in general.
Just jeans
denim.
in general.
There's no denim in the
No denim in the
Keene
we're denim free. It's like I did that years ago.
Yeah.
Except my Levi's cost $7.95. I remember the day where my father figured out he had to spend more than $10 a pair.
Right.
Mental. Right. Absolutely mental. Good morning, San Francisco, as we look at Lisa. Ed Ludlow, he's in Levi's.
Yes.
He's driving his Tesla with like automatic
self-driving,
driving. Self-driving in his Levi's. Matt Miller gave me the prep questions for Ellen Walsh. He joins us now, senior fellow Atlantic Council, and I'm supposed to go like big, tell me about the Straits of Malacca, No. Matt Miller wants to know about U.S. oil demand. Ellen, let's begin with just the sheer ability. Can you calculate oil demand, or are we guessing?
It's definitely somewhat of a guess, but I would say it's an educated guess, because we can look at how much oil is consumed in the prior week. So we have a sense of what it was last week.
Right.
It's still somewhat of a guess, but it's definitely an educated guess.
Are we consuming in America, and critically, are we consuming greater oil demand in EM?
What's interesting is that it looks like our oil demand is starting to decline. The data from last week showed that actually gasoline demand has slumped. There was an expectation that there would be a draw in gasoline stocks for last week, but instead it actually showed a rise, meaning that there was less gasoline consumed than people expected. And this is despite refiners cutting back on output. And this is a bit of a surprise considering, this is summertime. We're heading into the July 4th weekend. Gasoline demand is typically strong. The prior week showed very strong demand. And so it's definitely, I would say, a concerning sign, but I wouldn't start to worry yet. If we get another week of discouraging demand and discouraging consumption, then then there's a potential to start to worry about this.
Ellen, I see WTI crude oil at just over $81 a barrel here. What's kind of really driving the price of global crude these days? Is it supply? Is it demand? What's kind of the key thing that smart folks like you are looking at?
So definitely the demand numbers, somewhat of the supply numbers. The supply is pretty much kind of we've gotten over our supply shock, you could say, in terms of OPEC's decision. It does seem that the market has kind of gotten all out of its system, and prices have returned to where they were before. OPEC said, in about a year or maybe more, we're going to start slowly putting more barrels back on the market. It seems the market's kind of gotten over that, and so I would say that the issues right now are both keeping an eye on where consumption is going, is it showing signs of economic concerns, and then the geopolitical situation. Because as things start to, it seems things are starting to heat up between Israel and Hezbollah and Lebanon, and there's definitely the potential for further destabilization, not because there's a whole lot of supply disruption going on between Lebanon and Israel, but because of the larger regional disruptions. Once things get started, that means Iran is going to get involved. The Houthis are always looking for a reason to disrupt shipping, and so that is definitely a concern in terms of global supply.
Good morning, YouTube across the world. An hour from the Straits of Malacca. Very cool. Over near Singapore in Indonesia. Ellen Wald, your book, Saudi Inc., is absolutely definitive. You mentioned the Straits of Hormuz and some of the bottlenecks there. Do Saudis have control of the logistics of your oil over to the Straits of Malacca and up to Japan? I mean, you talk in your book about what they're doing is for their sons. Does Saudi have command of the oceans right now?
No, we're definitely not talking about a kind of British Empire. The sun never sets on the British Empire because of their control over the seas, and they are absolutely, subject to the kinds of closures at certain choke points that make oil supply vulnerable. But they do have very strong relations with Asia, with their Japanese customers, with their Chinese customers. And this is a relationship that they have been cultivating for many, many years. I mean, it goes back all the way to, early 90s when Ali Naimi went to China, and, he talks about going and getting out of the airport and seeing a one-lane road full of bikes leaving the airport. And he said, we need to sell our oil somewhere, but not here, not yet. But China never left his radar. And years later, they started doing the deals. They are in with China. I mean, the Saudi-China relationship is so much deeper, I think, than most people realize. I mean, this is a company, Aramco, that has a lot of joint ventures with China. They have sales agreements. I mean, they're very, very close with China. And so I think that while certain kinds of shipping disruptions could potentially be disruptive, their relationship with China really, I think, helps ensure that that's not a primary issue.
Thank you for the brief. Ellen Wald here, as Paul mentions, oil solidly at 80. Ellen Wald is with the Atlantic Council. Paul, that's brilliant in that I don't know what to make of $80 barrel anymore. Is it high? Is it middle? Is it low? I don't know.
I mean, what I hear from the experts, Tom, is, the cost to get oil out of the ground in the U.S. is $40, $50. So, boy, at $80, they're making a lot of money there. Now,
will it come up in the debate tonight? Yeah. Trump's going to go, I'm going to predict this, but the former president is going to say, you're against hydrocarbons and that. Does Joe Biden come out and admit the oil production on his watch, even if a part of his constituency would like the oil production to go away? Those are the stereotypes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think what we learned with just the invasion of Ukraine is just the global energy infrastructure is fragile, and we needed Europe needed energy there, and a lot of it was U.S. Natural gas. So again, energy transition in full swing, but it seems like the fossil fuels are going to be here for a while.
It's our new distribution out on YouTube. Search and subscribe to Bloomberg Podcasts, all sorts of other podcasts. On Apple Podcasts, I'm doing Single Best Ideas, 6 Minutes of Smart, each and every day. We're also out on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Paul, Apple CarPlay with a new edition coming out, I don't know when, September. I guess way improved. They're really listening to people. It's going to be voice activated. You can sit in your car and go, give me Lisa Mateo. Boom.
Boom. Exactly.
Just like
okay.
that.
All right, well, that's good.
That's what we're
I
working
might have that
towards.
in my new car. I'm going to check that out over the weekend.
You can go, I need Carol Masser now.
Exactly. Who does?
You can get Carol Masser on, of course, in the afternoons as well. Tonight, our debate coverage, not at 9 p.m., at 8 p.m., with clear, good conversation away from the trivialities of the moment. David Gura in Atlanta from New York. Bloomberg Surveillance.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Futures pointing to a lower open. NASDAQ futures down 0.2%. Dow futures and S&P futures both down 0.1%. We had the 2-year yield at 4.75%. That's little change. The yield on the 10-year 4.32%. And that is little change. Since we just had Ellen Wald talking about U.S. oil demand, I want to get to this. Some moves in energy. SM Energy and talks to buy XCL Resources. It's a deal that values that Utah oil and gas producer at $3 billion. SMN Energy, it's down about 1%. And shares of GSK, they're falling. Their ADRs down nearly 2%. U.S. health officials recommending restricting its RSV shot to those who are older, more at risk. And finally, SpaceX been picked by NASA for an $843 million contract. They're going to build a spacecraft to guide the International Space Station out of orbit and have it retired. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Lisa Mateo, thanks so much. I look at the screen, equities, bonds, currencies, commodities, and the word I would use is soup. And that's what we got in our economic data today. Claims come in at these new elevated levels with a revision pretty much on target. I'm sorry, getting out to 4-week moving average, Paul, getting up way above 230,000. I mean, that's where we're heading on claims. And Ian Lincoln was saying that's what he's watching.
Yeah. Initial jobless claims, Tom, as you mentioned, came in at 233,000. Consensus was 235,000 last month. Revised up just a tick from 238,000 to 239,000. So that number, as you mentioned, Tom, on a 4-week moving average, is kind of moving higher a little bit.
Third look on GDP, and the number that sticks out huge is personal consumption was modeled at 2.0%, and it comes in light, 1.5%. That is something that economists will chew on here. We'll get to that with Dana Peterson in a moment. It also knows across durable goods, which Jan Hatzius at Goldman Sachs lectured me on this once. He said, Tom, take a 3-month moving average.
Okay. Which
we don't in the media do. Oh, we're breathless. Capital goods, ex-defense, ex-Boeing. Where's a negative statistic, but I don't know what to make of it. It's a churn to the market here. Again, looking 2-year yield 4.73% in a little bit lower yields is how I'd put it. The 10-year yield moves in an Ian Lincoln way. 4.31%, a little lower yield there. Futures churn, the VIX 12.64. All of our economic indicators, including into tomorrow's jamboree from 8:30 onto the 10 o'clock hour. Our economic indicators brought to you by Commonwealth. Join over 2,000 independent financial advisors. They are taking control of their growth with advisor-centric support and future-ready technologies.
Wow.
Grow on your own terms with a partner dedicated to your success. Go with Commonwealth. Commonwealth.com to learn how. And we thank Commonwealth for a great commitment to what we're doing here. We also thank Dana Peterson.
Yeah.
The last time she was on, she was just lights out on the American consumer. Dana, it's unfair with the data coming out, but what is your model of Q2 GDP right now? We had someone on earlier modeling a sprightly 2.3%. Do you agree?
Well, we actually have GDP growth probably between 0 and 1% annualized in the second quarter. Now, we could revise that up a little bit. It really depends on what we see tomorrow with the personal income and spending data, but consumers are pulling back, and it's a reflection of the fact that excess savings are gone, real incomes are below real spending, and people are levering up and paying a lot of interest on their debt.
Yeah, and Paul, this is what surveillance is about. We like the difference of opinions. We don't have an opinion, but we're going to listen to those more optimistic and those like Dana Peterson, sub 1%.
Exactly. So Dana, talk to us about the consumer out there. I mean, essentially, the consumer wants a job. He or she has a job. Wages are increasing. How do you see the consumer here today?
It's really mixed. Consumers are saying, yes, I'm working. I like that. My finances are okay. The present situation is fine, but they're still complaining about elevated prices.
Yep.
Eggs are $8, bread's 10, and they're also more concerned about the future. Their expectations for the labor market are starting to erode a bit. They're concerned about their incomes. They're also very concerned about business conditions going forward. And we're seeing this tug of war, and it looks like expectations that are weakening are starting to take over a little bit in the numbers.
So where are we going to see that? Are we going to see that where are we going to see weakness in this economy if it does, in fact, accelerate to some degree? Will it be in the labor market? Will we see unemployment kind of inching above 4%?
Oh, we think the unemployment rate could tick up to maybe 4.2%, but that's really low, and that's still a pretty good labor market. Yeah. I think the thing is that consumers, if the Fed sees that consumers are still working, but they pull back on spending, and that helps cool inflation, that's a perfect scenario. It's when people start losing jobs. I think that's when the Fed gets really worried and might accelerate interest rate cuts.
So do you expect this Fed to sit pat here in the upcoming meetings and maybe wait until maybe even December or maybe even later?
Yes, we think the Fed's going to stay put. Certainly inflation is their biggest issue, and it's still sticky. So tomorrow's number, again, will be really important to see if the easing that we saw in CPI shows up in PCE. We have the Fed cutting in November and December.
I stand corrected. Dana said eggs at $10.
Oh, boy.
And I said, you got to be kidding me. Dana Peterson, of course, nailing it on the research side. The basic whole paycheck eggs are $4.19. And then you work yourself up $6, $7, $8. I don't know. The ones I buy are $7.29. And there is a dozen eggs for $9.99. Dana Peterson
nailed it.
Nails it.
Who cares about the GDP call?
Exactly. Dana, are we substituting? Am I looking at $9.99 eggs and saying, oh no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to buy the $7.29 eggs?
Yes, people are definitely trading down. They're buying the store brands. And so we're seeing that with goods and big ticket items. They're not purchasing like cars. And if they are buying a car, they're buying a used one, not a new one. But also with services, they're saying, I'm not going to go to the movies. I will stay at home and stream. And if I do pay for services, it's going to be my health insurance and it's also going to be my car insurance.
So the expectations for inflation, I know that's important for the Federal Reserve. What does your data show about consumers' expectations for inflation?
Well, the good news is that our one-year inflation expectations gauge continues to tick downward.
Okay.
It was very elevated a couple of years ago. It's much better now. Even though consumers are complaining now, they're saying, well, we hope things will be better in the future and that our wallets will be happy about that.
All right. So at the end of the day here, I mean, this Federal Reserve probably going to ease. Is that going to be enough for this U.S. economy? Does this U.S. economy need more rate cuts faster, or do you think this economy can kind of hang in there and that soft landing can continue?
I think the economy can hang in there. Again, the key is people working. And as long as people have some income coming in and they can still pay for the basics, then that's a good economy. People may not feel that way because people like to have excess and they like to be able to spend. But from the Fed's point of view, a healthy labor market is important, but more importantly, they need to get inflation down because everyone feels inflation.
Lisa Mateo, can you get eggs at Costco? Can you go there and buy?
That's the only place you want to get them.
Okay.
Really?
What's a dozen eggs cost at Costco?
No, you don't get a dozen. You get the 2 dozen, like the double whammy pack.
The double whammy pack?
Yes.
So Dana Peterson, is that where we're going to
money.
a double whammy pack consumption in America? Because people are totally strapped. I mean, we are.
Yes, that's definitely what we're seeing in the data and what we're hearing from the write-ins from consumers. But again, the economy probably was a little bit overheated last year. And the thing is that we're seeing this cooling, and that's necessary for inflation to get lower. But again, there are key elements of inflation that the Fed is kind of losing the war on. Certainly when it comes to insurance costs and even wages. And that's a reflection of tightness in the labor market and labor shortages, and that's feeding through to inflation.
Dana, you got to talk to Lisa Mateo, as you do your wonderful research for the conference board. I mean, here's a double whammy pack. Eggs, 5 dozen.
5 dozen?
I'm telling you. How
many eggs do you eat?
$12.20. I don't have a calculator. What's $12.27 divided by 5? That's like under $3 a dozen, right?
I'm telling you, it's the best place to get eggs.
What do you do with 5 dozen eggs? Dana Peterson wants to know.
You boil some of them. You can make omelets. We use eggs all the time. It could even be for dinner.
The Economist, Lisa Mateo for dinner. That's a Filipino dinner. You take leftovers and throw an egg on top of it.
There you go.
That's called gourmet. Dana Peterson, brilliant. Thank you so much. Chief Economist at the Conference Board. Don't you steal the Economist, Lisa Mateo, from us. Bloomberg Surveillance are brought to you by IBKR. Financial advisors switch to Interactive Brokers for the lowest cost global trading turnkey. Custody solutions, no ticket charges. No conflicts of your interest at ibkr.com/RIA. He buys 7 dozen eggs. He tops Lisa with our news in New York City. Michael Ball.
and eats every one of them. In a little more than 12 hours, President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump will take center stage for tonight's debate. Jack Fitzpatrick covers Congress for Bloomberg Government and sets expectations are set among lawmakers on Capitol Hill.
Funny enough, Congress will be in on a Friday. They usually are not. So after the debate, members will be around and will not really have the opportunity to avoid the media. And so there will be a bit of a, I think, next day spin session as members on both sides of the aisle make their case that each candidate did a better job.
Bloomberg Government's Jack Fitzpatrick, part of our team covering the CNN presidential debate. Live coverage begins with a special edition of Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio and television. And the Bloomberg coverage starts at 8 p.m. Wall Street time. Calm returned to Bolivia's capital after troops led by a top general stormed the presidential palace, then quickly retreated. The tumultuous scenes that threatened to pitch the long-troubled South American democracy into chaos. Yesterday, the nation of 12 million watched in shock and bewilderment as Bolivian military forces appeared to turn on the government of President Luis Arce. They seized control of the capital's main square with armored personnel carriers, crashing a tank into the palace and unleashing tear gas on protesters who flooded the streets. First Lady Dr. Jill Biden hosted a Pride Month celebration at the White House. The First Lady says pride is a celebration and a declaration to not be silenced.
I'm so happy to be here with my daughter as we celebrate your families. Those families that you're born into, the ones you build, and the ones you choose.
Hundreds of guests were on the South Lawn for the event that also included live music. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. Speaking of laying eggs, I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. But I think it's really tangible. I mean, it's the level of prices.
Yeah.
And everyone's dealing with
does.
it.
Yep.
And this goes to this word from the 60s, microcosm. I mean, everything is a microcosm down to you and I going mental. Lisa's buying 5 dozen eggs for half the price of you and I doing a morning seamless breakfast.
I know.
For Instacart breakfast for our kids.
I don't know.
It's nuts.
This whole Mateo household thing has got me worried. I mean, I
I'm taking notes.
I couldn't survive a day there, I don't think.
Could you see me at Costco?
I cannot.
I
cannot.
And what's the hot dog there?
It's $1.50 for the hot dog and the soda.
Nice.
And
That's
it's
what we're
booming.
talking
I mean,
about.
seriously.
For
I mean, a lot.
decades.
And people say Walmart's really shifting. I mean,
But the thing is, when you go to Costco, that restaurant area is packed.
It is always.
It's always crowded. People have the
Yeah.
pizza, the hot dogs, everything, because it's
I know.
affordable.
Yep.
Dana Peterson's spending $10 a dozen.
Yeah.
What's that about?
I don't know.
I've never done that.
No.
That's like rich.
But she was right on it. She had it.
I'm spending $7.29, which I didn't even know.
Well, I'm doing $58 for the New York Strip at Keene Steakhouse. I mean,
Really?
that's my
Are
inflation
you
barometer.
taking the ferry tomorrow to see John Tucker at the deck?
I might.
You'll pay
I'm
$70.
off tomorrow. How about that?
Are you off tomorrow?
Yes.
Me too.
Get used to
Me
it.
too. Oh!
my Tom, you're
Am I
got
off?
your
No, you're here.
Michael
I'm here
Barr,
for you, Daddy.
Michael
Thank
Barr.
It's the Michael Barr Show tomorrow.
Exactly.
Stay with us, folks. It's the debate Thursday. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. We've got red on the screen after some more economic data, and it looks like it's taking longer for unemployed people to find a job. We had recurring applications for U.S. jobless benefits that rose to the highest level since the end of 2021. Now, then on top of that, you have orders for durable goods orders, such as autos, computers. That barely rose in May. At 10 a.m., we also get pending home sales. To earnings we go. We'll head back to Walgreens. They're down about 15%. The company cut its profit forecast for the full year. It's also planning to shut down some underperforming U.S. stores. That's affecting shares of CVS Health, now down about 3%. Later this afternoon, we're going to move on to Nike. Those shares up about 0.2% right now. And finally, the price of Rupert Murdoch's triplex penthouse in Manhattan's Flatiron, well, it's been slashed yet again. Whoa. You too, it can be yours for just $28.5 million, less than half of its initial ask. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
He got married again recently.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he's been married just in the last 10 years 2 or 3 times.
I can't keep up.
Yeah,
Rupert
I can't
Murdoch.
keep up.
Huh.
Good for him.
Okay.
I'm so going to avoid this. Joining us now, the only person I want to talk to on this day, Wendy Schiller, is definitive, whatever your politics at Brown University, on all that we're observing here. Wendy, I'm just going to frame the ages for you. Nixon and JFK were something like 42, 43, and 47 at the 1960 debate. I went back and I looked, and Woodrow Wilson, with a deceased wife in the White House, would have been something like 63, 64 at a debate if it had happened in 1916. And tonight we have a 78-year-old and an 81-year-old debating. This is just flat out historic. How do you frame the age issue around what we will see tonight at 9 p.m.?
Well, I mean, I think it's an interesting thing for all of America to watch. I mean, on the one hand, you can feel pretty happy about life expectancy in America and functionality. I mean, 40 years ago, Ronald Reagan was, pretty old by most standards when he assumed the presidency. So it's not as if we haven't seen this before. And if you think, well, we're in better shape than we were 40 years ago, why not somebody in their mid 70s? But we're not even in the mid 70s. We're at, 78 and 81. So I think, it's up there. And I'm curious at 9 o'clock at night for 90 minutes, who could function well under those circumstances, whether you're in your 40s or your 70s. That's going to be the interesting thing. But we know these candidates, and we know their frailties and their flaws, and we know their strengths. You've got to figure Trump will look more energetic and more vibrant because that's just the way he rolls. And Biden's going to have to do everything he can, I think, to keep up with that kind of energy.
Wendy, who do you think has more to lose tonight?
Paul, I definitely think President Biden has more to lose tonight. We have seen these polls tighten. Let's go back to January, December, even in swing states now, Trump's ahead, but by less. And, the national polls, there's 3 major national polls this week. They all have them within the statistical margin of error. They're all tied, essentially. So the person who has the most to lose is the incumbent president who's been catching up slowly but surely to Donald Trump. And sort of people are saying, well, maybe Biden won't be that bad. Maybe he's in better shape than we think. But if he stumbles badly tonight, I think that's going to bring those levels of concern about his age back into the mix. And I think it could cost him.
Wendy, what do you think about the debate parameters here tonight in terms of no audience, muting the other candidate's mic? What's that all about?
Actually, Paul, to my previous point, I think muting the mic helps Biden more than it helps Trump, because Trump's off-the-cuff remarks really, his audience loves that. In other words, his base loves that. Most Democrats cringe when Biden goes off remarks, off script. So those sort of mic'd comments, I think, by Biden could get him in more trouble than Trump. So this is a good thing for Biden. The studio audience, I think, is a shame. I mean, it's America. We have elections, regularly scheduled, constitutionally mandated elections. And part of that process is audience input, voter input. So it's unfortunate that the audience won't be allowed to be in the studio with the candidates.
What is your guess, Professor Schiller, of the topic that will cause both candidates to pause?
Well, I think Biden is going to really, I mean, the strategy has got to be make Trump lose it. In a way that, Trump can lose it, but really lose it and really scare those independents who have stayed away from Trump and Trump-backed candidates. We've even seen that this week in Republican primaries. Trump-backed candidates did not do so well in their House races. So really scare people about the prospect of Donald Trump, and Trump has to get Biden to stumble. The border, I think it's really going, even though things are better at the border since the executive order a couple of weeks ago, but still, Trump's got to get under Biden's skin and vice versa.
My guess is a complete amateur. I defer to David Gurr, Joe Matthew, Katie Lines. The whole border thing is going to be a tinderbox.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Wendy, why are we having this debate so early in the campaign cycle season?
I think it was a moment of opportunity for each candidate before the conventions to go into the summer with some momentum, right? As we just said, they're tied, right? Biden has slow momentum catching up to Trump, but they're tied. So this could be breakout, right? Trump seems more reasonable, let's say tonight, and independents come back to him. Biden seems stronger, more vibrant than people thought. Then he gets the momentum swing going before the conventions, not after. And I think that is a big thing for both candidates.
And now we segue for one final question with Wendy Schiller. We can do this, folks. Lisa Mateo, Wendy, featured a Wall Street Journal article on the rise of Hispanic America. What will be the impact of Hispanic America on November 5th?
Well, Lisa, that's a great thing to look at. We have this conversation every 4 years, at least for the last decade, how the Latino vote, Hispanic vote will make the difference. 48% turnout of registered Hispanic votes stays pretty much the same in the last 3 presidential cycles. I'm not thinking that's changing much, except if Trump, let's say, picks Marco Rubio, who's of Cuban descent. Latinos are not monolithic. Doesn't mean every Latino will vote for Trump and Rubio, but it certainly is a very significant sign by the Republican Party. They're going after Latino votes in a much stronger way than ever before. So maybe we see a difference, but we have not seen the kind of surge in turnout in the last 3 presidential elections.
Lisa, what do you got?
Yeah, Wendy, the age of the Hispanic population, they also skew younger. How is that going to be in relation to how they react to it? Are they looking for that younger voter?
Yeah, Lisa, that's a really great point, because especially in the last 10 to 15 years, those younger voters now can vote, right? So we've always had a youngish population, but now we've got younger voters. And the question is things like abortion, reproductive services. Latinos tend to be more Catholic, tend to be more conservative on abortion and other social issues. However, younger Latinos in some segments of the Latino population are strong supporters of the right to abortion. So that's going to be a big issue. And that's where Biden can get Trump. Can he get Trump to commit to not enforcing a ban, in other words, not denying contraception? Can he get him on the record, and can he go after abortion and the Republicans? That's going to be a big thing for even young Latino voters.
Wendy Schiller, thrilled. We'd be honored to have you on tomorrow if we could figure out your schedule. Wendy Schiller at Brown University, her civics textbooks her civics textbooks are definitive, and I've just been told her entourage has said they've given her waiver for 6:10 a.m.
All right, that's
She's
good
pulling
for
an
us.
all-nighter. That's
Good
what
for
you
us.
do.
Yep.
The way you roll in Providence.
Yeah, exactly.
You hit the bars and you come home and you
I've
do
heard.
a 6:10
I've heard.
a.m.
I don't know this, but I've
That's what
heard.
they do at Brown University.
Yeah, I would too.
Our coverage is tonight. Joe Matthew, who is encyclopedic across this nation he's like a legend in Boston. Joe Matthew will lead the coverage with Kaylee Lines. You know Kaylee.
I
She's
do.
UVA,
Top
and she's done
notch.
massive read-in in work, and they're going to be ready to go. And it's not going to be the normal rote coverage that you see out there. I don't think we have a countdown clock.
We don't have a countdown clock, but we do have David Gurr in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So that'll be good for us.
That'll be good. 8 p.m. tonight. Look for that as well. When you play a guitar, you touch the string, and it's a harmonic, it's called. It's a bright sound. The most famous harmonics ever in modern music is not Stephen Stills with Buffalo Springfield. No. It's somebody different. It is Neil Young with all of his, they were like 19 years old.
I know.
And this song just became iconic for the song, but also, of course, for Neil Young's harmonics with Buffalo Springfield. This is a few years ago, folks, but it fits for protest and politics across America.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney.
We're addicted to the parlor game, the Fed, the monetary ballet.
Where do you see opportunities in a fixed income space here in 24?
With Lisa Mateo on markets.
AI affecting demand for cloud computing.
And Michael Barr with news.
Another legal setback for Donald Trump, this time across the pond.
The best in economics, finance, investment, and international relations. This is Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Tom Keene, Paul Sweeney, Michael Barr, Lisa Mateo. Thank you for being with us on a Thursday. Economic data out jumbles the market is how I'd put it. A little bit of red on the screen, but we'll see how we open here in 30 minutes. BitDog, doing under 60,000 for a cup of Sanka and back up 61,000. And you're following Ethereum as well, right, Paul?
Oh, sure. Why not? I mean,
it's going to be an ETF.
It's going to be an ETF. That means we'll talk to Eric Balchunas about another big milestone in the ETF/crypto space. So a lot going on out there. We got yields, Tom, coming up just slightly. We got the 10-year Treasury, 4.30%.
10-year real yield, 2.04. That's in a basis point, maybe 2 basis points well. We're really going to go all currency here in a moment. It's such an important discussion. We're going to get right to it. We say good morning to all of you on YouTube, on Apple CarPlay, on Android Auto. It's a new digital experience as well. She's an experience as well from the Interactive Broker Studios with our Bloomberg Business Flash, Lisa Mateo.
You could say that again. Futures still lower this morning. This is after data signaling further labor market weakness. NASDAQ futures, they're little change now, down about 9 points. Dow futures down 0.2%, 78 points. We have S&P futures, little change, down about a point. So we see a little bit of a difference there. The 2-year yield, 4.72%. That's down 2 basis points. The yield on the 10-year, 4.30%, and that's down 2 basis points. We head over to currencies. Japanese yen, 160.41 against the dollar. Now we'll take it over to tech. Shares of Micron Technology, they're falling, down 4%. Investors were hoping for a bigger payoff from that AI boom, but they just didn't get what they were looking for. That's also dragging down a number of its megatech peers, including NVIDIA, down nearly 1% right now. And SoftBank's Vision Fund 2, well, they seem to think AI still has that punch. It's investing in U.S.-based AI startup Perplexity AI at a $3 billion valuation. And the AI rally is helping Amazon. The company reached a $2 trillion market valuation for the first time ever. Shares up about 0.5%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Lisa, thanks so much. I'm loving this YouTube chat. I mean, I'm learning stuff every day from everybody listening on YouTube. I didn't know this, and this was reported just a couple of days ago. We played For What It's Worth here going out the last hour. Neil Young and Crazy Horse have canceled a huge part of their tour.
Did they?
Not just Neil Young at 78 ill, but other people within the band. Are ill as well. So our thoughts go out to the giant Neil Young and all of Crazy Horse, which has been his band since time began. This is well timed. We are really going to digress from debate chit-chat, economics, finance, and you know what, folks? We're just going to concentrate on yen and on intervention this week. And Daragh Maher is hugely qualified with the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, HSBC, and he joins us in studio. Is there a convenient time to do a unilateral intervention like this Sunday, our time, 6-7 p.m. work, Monday morning Japan time?
It's certainly on the list of possibilities. I suspect Friday afternoon is a good one in New York time as well.
Friday, New York time.
Yeah, it's thinner liquidity. You get bigger bang for your buck.
Paul's on the C streak to on the deck in Atlanta Highlands. Lisa's going to Costco. Let's intervene. Is that how it works?
I think that'll be exactly what Japan's MOF has in mind. They'll be thinking about Costco. Look, it's thin liquidity. And actually, I guess, look, the way we have to think about it is the other way around. Under what conditions might the spot market be racing higher that will give the MOF cover to come in? Because at the moment, what we have higher is dollar yen grinding higher. That isn't a trigger.
You went to one of the toughest schools out there, UC Dublin, okay? And they taught you intervention. Where in your literature does it say unilateral intervention works? I've never found it.
I've never found it, and I was taught by tough Catholic priests, so there was harsh lessons there. I would say it's working, so I'm going to push back on that. I would say it's working because what we have to think about is a counterfactual. Had there not been all this chatter about possible intervention, the actual intervention, where would dollar yen be trading right now? I mean, I think it's safe to say a whole lot higher. So, it depends how you define success. And, this has been a market where it's very hard to find people who will kind of play the downside dollar yen trade. They might talk about it. We do in our forecast 3 months, 6 months. And we all end up snow plowing it further into the future as dollar yen just keeps grinding higher. And I think that's what the MOF and and the BOJ on their behalf are going to have to step in potentially to try and reintroduce meaningful two-way risk there.
Is there a bear case for the U.S. dollar anywhere?
It's a narrow path to a weaker dollar. You kind of need that global Goldilocks scenario of falling inflation and growth recovering. And, you know, you get patches of it, and we've had them a couple of months ago in Europe, and then you get another soft patch in Europe as we've had over the last couple of weeks. And at the end of the day, the US economy, I know this morning we've had a small revision, but final domestic demand's still strong. Atlanta Fed, GDP now punching along at 3% for the second quarter. It's the US exceptionalism. The joke I make is Goldilocks has an American accent. And, you know, and I think that's true. And so long as that remains true, it's hard to be, I think, a pervasive seller of the dollar.
All right, we've got some political issues in France, in the UK. How does that impact the euro, the pound sterling?
It certainly impacted euro. I mean, you can see that in terms of the relationship with the euro and the French spreads over German bonds. That's been quite evident. I think we've reached kind of a holding point, you know, ahead of the first round of the elections in France. The markets want to see how that plays out, how many of Macron's candidates make it through the second round. So I think we're kind of in a holding pattern there. UK, I don't think sterling cares. I really don't think sterling cares, which is my sales team back in the trading floor now will all be wincing because I've kind of killed a whole trade for them and a reason to call clients. But I think that's the reality at the moment.
I'm looking at the cacophony of like 1992 out to 1998 as well. Something totally obscure is Sing dollar, Singapore dollar, versus the Japanese yen soap opera. Off the pandemic, I have a roughly 60% depreciation of the Japanese yen versus a vibrant Singapore. And even if I go center tendency back 3 decades, I'm still talking a massive depreciation. How many Toyotas are they buying in Singapore?
Well, apparently not that many. Japanese exports are not exactly surging at the moment. Well, I can give you one reason. I lived in Singapore in the mid '90s, and they add a lot of money to what it costs to import a car into Singapore. So maybe there's different things going on there. It's a weird thing. You are seeing a compression of import demand in Japan, which is to be expected. You are seeing tourists visiting Japan because it is a super place in relative terms to
Angelina Rascori said yesterday Chinese are going to Japan to shop.
Yeah, and you can see why. The difficulty is you are still trying to export into a weak global economy. So it's fine saying we're price competitive and we're cheaper now than we were back in the 90s or even 6 months ago. But if demand isn't there in the quantum you need, then perhaps you can't capitalize.
And the arch question, which goes to HSBC's wheelhouse with huge heritage here, is their inflation, their overt inflation experiment, A, is it done? And B, does it fail as they go back to disinflation and painful deflation?
It doesn't feel that way. It feels as though they have kind of broken the cycle of deflation expectations within Japan. And that's the key. And also, I think what's happening on the wages front in Japan will give the BOJ some degree of comfort that they might have begun to create a virtuous circle between wages and sustaining those inflation expectations. So, look, I think we've moved a long way from a really persistent deflation mindset in Japan. But, at the end of the day, it's been helped a lot by this weak currency. It adds to Japanese prices, it adds to the perception of inflation for everything that you're importing. So the job's not done. But look, it's amazing that we're talking about Japan raising rates when the rest of G10 is cutting rates. I mean, how many times have we had that conversation? It's really weird.
Daragh Maher, thank you so much. He's with HSBC. Right on the screen, small caps have a little bit of a Lori Calvasino lift. We'll leave it
look at that.
At that. The VIX 12.57. With our news in New York City, Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom, Paul, and Lisa. It is debate night for President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. Biden has been out of the public eye in recent days, holding mock debates. Trump was asked if he will be treated fairly during tonight's CNN debate.
Am I going to get a fair? Probably not, but it would be very good for CNN. They're having a lot of ratings problems. I think it would be very good for CNN, actually, in terms of its credibility. It'll be interesting to see.
Meanwhile, there are new ground rules. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter has more.
The rules have been drafted by CNN and agreed to by both campaigns. First moderators Jake Tapper, Dana Bash, and their control room will have control of the mics. And the mics will be muted unless it is the candidate's turn to speak. Second, there will be no live studio audience to react to what traditionally have been called moments in the past debates. Biden won the coin flip, meaning he will stand at the lectern to the speaker's right, and Trump will get the closing statement. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
Tonight's CNN presidential debate begins at 9 p.m. Wall Street time. Bloomberg's coverage starts at 8 with a special edition of Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio and television. The U.S. Supreme Court is poised to allow abortions in medical emergencies in Idaho, according to a copy of an opinion that was briefly posted on the court's website. According to Bloomberg Law, the posting was a mistake and it was taken down shortly after. The decision would reinstate a lower court order that had ensured hospitals in the state could perform emergency abortions to protect the health of the mother. The posted version indicated the majority will dismiss appeals by Idaho and Republican leaders in the state without resolving the core issues in the case. The population of young children fell across most U.S. cities since the start of the COVID pandemic. That's according to U.S. Census Bureau data released today. Most of the notable exceptions were in Florida, better known as a retirement haven. Several metros in the Sunshine State saw the fastest growth in the numbers of children. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Thanks to everyone out there. I'm sorry, it is this microcosm effect. It's as silly as eggs. But, you know, some guy, Ray, out on Twitter's like emailing in $5, whatever.
Okay.
John Tucker emails in.
Whoa.
The Wawa.
Yeah.
Ready? Dozen eggs. How much? $4.49.
There you go. The Wawa. Route 36.
So Costco's $8 cheaper if John's buying 5 dozen eggs at the Wawa.
Yep.
I mean, there it is. But this is what it's about, and it's about substitution. And you know, Jen Bartusius is making a big deal about at Walmart. The fancy people are shopping at Walmart.
They are. I mean,
what are you guys
the
waving
number
to?
one.
It's like
We got like a whole audience back there.
I'm live. I can't. Hi, guys.
There you go.
Who let him in?
I don't know.
Do I owe them money?
No.
Exactly. We got towards. You know, I didn't know until Jen Bartusius told me that the number one supermarket chain in the U.S. by far is Walmart. I never would have guessed that. Go figure. So do you go into Walmart to buy groceries and then wander over to buy
It's the same like Target. If you go to the super Target, like you can get you can go and get everything in one shot instead of having to go to different stores. So you can go get your produce and your vegetables and stuff, and then you can go get your jeans.
Look at that.
Or
All
a
right.
pair of sneakers.
Power tools. Fine.
It's
All right.
to make your life easier.
And does that work?
It does. I don't do it because I find I go
You know
different
what's
places
great?
to save
You know what's
money.
All right. Different places. You're just on top.
What's great is Joe Mysick is going to have so much time to shop eggs
Yes,
at 14
exactly.
different
Well,
places.
he's in Brooklyn. He goes
We
to
got
the
something
corner
special
shop.
coming up here with Mr. Mysick, the number one person in the world on municipal bonds. From New York City, Bloomberg Surveillance.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Futures still falling this morning. Right now, Nasdaq futures, they're a little changed, but down about 12 points. We have Dow futures down 0.2%, down 99 points. We have S&P futures, little change, down about 3 points. We have the 2-year yield at 4.72%. That's down 2 basis points. The yield on the 10-year, 4.29%. That's down 3 basis points. We'll take a quick check of commodities. We have spot gold higher at $2,322 an ounce. Brent crude, $86 a barrel. WTI crude, $81 a barrel. What's moving the markets? That would be Levi Strauss, down 17% now. Maybe you love their jeans, but the company reported sales its latest quarter missed expectations. Then you have fashion retailer H&M, their shares falling, down 11%. It blamed bad weather for its profit miss. And then after the bell, we move on to Nike. Analysts at Bloomberg Intelligence say that first half of Nike's new fiscal year could be volatile. Shares right now, they are little changed. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
I'm looking for a pair of shoes like Dan Ives. Can you imagine what they cost?
Fancy.
I mean, can you imagine what the? I mean, he's so large. I mean, he's probably talking directly to.
He's got several closets full of this.
This is a joy. A 4-hour conversation now with Joe Misek. He is retiring from Bloomberg.
Finally,
and he is, through all of his work, definitive municipal bonds. And Joe, I can't think of a better time for you to be here. I'm not going to give you the woe is me, what are you going to do in retirement? You're not going to retire. But the answer is I'm going to go back to October 29, 1975, your first day at Bloomberg. And it was also the day where Gerald Ford was alleged to have said to New York City, drop dead. Did Kathy Hochul just say to New York City, drop dead? What is your municipal world going to do with no congestion tax and radical cuts in planned construction?
Well, I think it's coming back. This is just a very short-term spasm, if you will, a political spasm. I think that congestion pricing has been sort of, the argument for it has been proven. Anyone who goes out in the New York City streets and highways now can see that. So I'm not overly concerned. It's funny, we have, people want to think right now that there's an immediate impact on the subway system. But in fact, no. On Thursdays and Fridays, subways are a pleasant ride in.
Yes, they are.
Right, but Joe, is New York, it was William Simon lecturing with David Gergen, William Simon, and Gerald Ford lecturing New York City on their evil ways. Is New York City a good credit?
Oh, absolutely. After the financial crisis, there's so many safeguards put in place for investors, and there's so many, you could have the state and the various oversight boards snap into action.
Yep.
Right now, it's not needed because New York City makes so much money. But I wanted to bring up a phrase, silly as eggs. I only caught that little bit of it, but I think I'm going to adopt it from now on.
Exactly. All right, Joe, so talk to us about the municipal bond market here. We've got interest rates higher, yields higher. What are we seeing in new issuance here? I mean, are we getting some fun new issuance? Because you get some crazy ones in your world. In your bonds.
Man, it's, Mr. Sweeney, we are just, it's going to town. We're up almost 40%. So the bankers are all extremely happy. We have more mega deals now. I think the last...
and a mega deal is like more than $1 billion?
More than $1 billion,
okay.
$1 billion plus, which in the municipal bond market's rare.
Right.
But we have broken the record already, which was, I think, 26 in 2020, and we are now up to 28. For the year, and we still have a half a year to go.
Can you buy municipal bonds where you say to yourself, I own a piece of LaGuardia or I own a piece of DFW? Is that still out there?
Sure you can. Oh, yeah. Airport bonds are, I would say airport bonds are a market favorite right now, especially because of the way travel has rebounded so smartly. And they offer a little bit more in terms of yield because of the commercial aspect, the alternative minimum tax. So, yeah, most airport bonds are market darlings.
Well, here are the controversial ones. Stadium bonds. You want to build a new football stadium, if you're the Kansas City Chiefs or the Charlotte, whatever they are, the Carolina, whatever they are. But people buy them up, right? People like those bonds.
Well, stadium bonds are usually very well structured now because you have a base of sales taxes supporting them and usually other taxes that a state or municipality throws in. So they're not really tied to the fortunes of a team. It's really the sales taxes around there. And stadium bonds, well, it's just got stadium frenzy. Like I read not too long ago that stadium construction generally moves in a 30-year phase. Yeah, 30-year cycle. Yeah. So here we are. This is the latest cycle.
Joe, what's the best way for our listeners? They don't have, like Sweeney's doing millions and millions of dollars. I mean, he's huge.
Obviously, yeah.
But what's the best way to purchase municipal bonds? Is it individual bonds? Unit trusts? Is it mutual funds? What's the Joe Mysick way to take advantage of tax-free bonds?
Well, if I were you out there, I would buy the individual bond and just do a little bit of your credit research and stay away from the crazier deals. But the funny thing about the muni market nowadays is that investors are essentially insulated from the more crazy stuff because that is usually sold via 144A and it's sold in minimum denominations of 100 or 250 or $500,000.
Can somebody with 10 or 20 grand go out and buy a bond or a few bonds?
You could buy certainly 4 bonds, and sometimes there are $1,000 denominations, not unheard of.
How do you know you're not getting run over by the spread? Paul, jump in here. How do you know? They got a spread of a Mack truck going.
Okay, you're gonna pay up. Okay, on tiny. Lot of that size, you're probably better off going into mutual funds.
Why can't, are there ETFs for the municipal bond business?
Yeah, you have ETFs.
Just buy an ETF.
ETFs, mutual funds, and then you have, of course, separately managed accounts. So, yeah, there's lots of there. I would say there's ease of access to this market now more than ever.
Right. Now, John Farrell's just back from the Amalfi Coast doing the Ripley Act. What are you going to do in retirement? All of Bloomberg wants to know.
Exactly.
Mike just emailed in. He goes, ask Mysick what he's going to do.
I'm working on my Tom Wolfe project. I'm working on, I want to finish up the introduction for what I'm calling the uncollected works of Tom Wolfe.
Okay. Can we call upon you if the municipal world blows up?
Of course.
Lisa, be nice and get Pebble. Lisa, Pebble Joe Mysick and get his cell phone.
Nice.
Okay, Joe, congratulations to all of us, and I'm sure John Micklethwaite,
the finish line.
I'm sure that John Micklethwaite, editor-in-chief, is aware of the contribution, truly over decades.
Yep. Just 43 years covering the municipal bond market. And Joe, guess what?
That's it?
That is it, my friend.
Man, California dead. Joe Mysick, no. Illinois dead. Joe Mysick, no. And that's the way it was. Yep. Remember luggage at Denver? Denver was going under.
Right.
No.
Yeah, no.
So what's the blow up right now that you can take advantage and you can pick up 30 beeps a yield?
Gosh, right now there's hardly anything that's in any kind of distress because there's so much federal government money that's still out there. So I don't think I've seen any. Good point, though. I'll give it some thought.
Even Illinois is okay.
Lisa's got Lisa's free cash flow.
Yeah,
because she's buying eggs for $2.40.
Silly as eggs.
Silly as
Joe Mysick, thank you so much for all of us at Bloomberg.
Legend.
Congratulations on owning the high ground, municipal finance. We need to get the market open. It's like a churn to the equity market. The VIX under 13 is important, 12.62. The yield, they're in a little bit off economic data. In now more, 4 basis points on the 10-year yield, 4.29%. The real yield, the 10-year, Joe Mysick never looks at the real yield, 2.02%. There is a debate tonight. Matthew Lyons Gura from Atlanta, Bloomberg Surveillance.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo alongside Tom Keene, Paul Sweeney with your opening bell report. We've had some more economic data out this morning, so it's going to be interesting to see how we open. We have recurring applications for U.S. jobless benefits rose to the highest level since the end of 2021. Continuing claims increased to 1.84 million last week. And then orders placed with factories for business equipment, that unexpectedly declined in May. All right, we're off and running, so let's see where we stand as far as the markets are concerned. We'll start with the S&P 500. That is little change, down 3 points at 5,474. The Dow down 0.1%, 44 points at 39,079. Then we have the NASDAQ. That is little changed, up about 3 points at 17,809. The 2-year yield, 4.72%. That's down 2 basis points. The yield on the 10-year, 4.29%. That's down 3 basis points. We have commodity spot gold higher at $2,323 an ounce. Brent crude at $86 a barrel. WTI crude at $81 a barrel. At the open, I also want to check in with Micron after its latest forecast failed to meet expectations, down 5%. Also affecting NVIDIA shares, they're down 1%. That is your Bloomberg opening bell report. Tom and Paul.
Is NVIDIA done? I mean, are there people, I just don't buy it. I mean, I can see how it pulls back.
Yeah.
And, it's such a moonshot, but there's nobody saying like it's over, right?
No,
not at all.
And we had that, and the stock was down 13%, in that 4 or 5 day trading period. Then it's bounced back a little bit.
Can you see Jensen Wang shopping? I mean, can you see Jensen like with Lisa over at Costco?
No.
He's buying the $10 eggs.
Yeah, he's buying the $10.
Oh, we've beaten that to death.
Yeah.
This is an important conversation because it's the first sentence of his report. Charles Tan really blew us away last time. American Century Investments. He's in New York. Co-chief investment officer for fixed income. And you nail it, and particularly on a day of presidential debate. You talk about a two-speed economy. And one of the great themes Paul and I have, we don't buy the aggregate America. There's the haves winning, the have-nots. They were never going to own NVIDIA. How polarized is America as we go to this debate?
Yeah, I feel like it's very polarized. I think the way we look at economy clearly is not a one big block, all the same. Is there a dichotomy, right, between the haves and have-nots? So if you think about the haves, there are people who say have financial assets that own NVIDIA, other stocks. They're feeling great. Stocks are going up. They own houses, and with a very low 30-year mortgage, they don't really feel the financial sort of tightening. And they also may have enough savings that are enjoying like a 5.5% of free yield.
Yep.
So the have-nots are the people who probably live from paycheck to paycheck, got a couple of checks during COVID. They are running out, and prices are high. They face that every day. And I heard you guys talk about the 2,000 eggs in Costco. I even go there, right? So my wife and I just shop there all day. And but for most people, it is a very tough situation. I think this morning's the comment by Walgreens CEO said it the best. He basically said, we're expecting the second half consumers to be stronger. That's not the case anymore. And even though the prices are not going up, and the consumers are resisting, so they're absolutely stunned by the absolute prices, which has gone up so much.
So in the fixed income space, what's the conversation you're having with your clients most often? Is this simply, I'm going to sit in a 2-year Treasury at 4.7%, or do I go out and take some credit risk out there? How do you guys view it?
Yeah, so we think, first of all, I think the fixed income market has come back, and the people are buying, bonds all across the curve. Just made a couple of trips to Middle East, Europe, and also Asia. You can see investors, these are mostly institutional investors, pension plans, sovereign wealth funds, central banks. They are piling into the bond market. That is one of the reasons why the credit spreads are so tight, right? Yep. They're driving spreads tight. There is very strong demand. But for us, we think the best strategy probably is the so-called a barbell strategy. On the front end, we really like some of the shorter maturity bonds, especially in the structured credit space. ABS, data center ABS deals, aircraft leasing, even CMBS. If you look carefully enough, you can find some really gems there. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you feel about just the credit environment out there, the credit quality out there? I mean, how concerned are you about credit quality? Where do you play it, or how do you kind of hedge it?
Yeah, we think that fundamentally the credit quality is still solid,
Okay.
right? So again, there is also this sort of a two-speed corporate, situation in the bond market, where the big companies, tech companies, AI companies are obviously doing very well. The ones that are kind of suffering from the tightening financial conditions are the ones who have a shorter financing, the bank loans, and
Right.
yeah, they have to really reprice to the current higher funding.
So I know
costs.
you're not going to quote on an individual bond, but perchance if I need to acquire today, I'm trying to do the math in my head, Paul's killing me, 25 years, the Walgreens 4.1% yield, I'm enjoying a yield right now of 6.2% on the Walgreens piece. I don't think it's traded today. With the stock back to 1997, Walgreens is down 21%. Are you at a point now where you're brave, where you can even research disasters like that?
Well, I would say in general, I think we don't quite like the corporate bond market at current speed.
Why?
Because the spreads are very tight.
The price is up so much in the yield compared to governments.
Right, exactly. Because the spread, the risk premium you enjoy by owning corporate bonds with credit risk over the Treasury is close to all-time in the lows, right? So it is not a good time to buy generic bonds.
But we have two groups. We have Walgreens with 65% debt, airlines, Paul, whichever train wreck we're looking at, 60-ish% debt. These massive technology companies have 2% or 0% debt. Should they be issuing bonds so American Century can buy them?
Well, they've been issuing bonds, and not for the sort of the needs, but basically they can cover this their needs and a very sort of they don't need to issue. But for us, the spreads are too tight. We're staying away from this kind of a generic corporate bonds. Instead, we're looking more into the corporate space, the European additional tier 1 capital. That's actually a very interesting play. So that's much more interesting.
So because you said you've been traveling, internationally recently. How do you think about the U.S. fixed income market versus non-U.S.? Where do you see opportunities?
Well, the U.S. Fixed income market offers much more choices and deeper liquidity and also yielding more. So most of the investors around the world, especially if they don't need to hedge back to their local currency, they come to the U.S.
Okay.
Right, but the hedging cost it is high. So if you're like a Euro-based investors or Japanese yen-based investors, with U.S. rates are so high, hedging back may not be the best idea.
Interesting. Where are you seeing the most demand for U.S. credit? Is it coming from Asia? Is it coming from Europe?
I think it's actually from probably all over the place. Probably first and foremost coming from the U.S. investors, right?
Yep.
One of the things you saw is in the annuity sales space. Life insurance company sales are at a record high. That's a reason because people like the higher yields, not necessarily spreads. Frankly, retail investors don't care about the spreads. They all look at the all-in yields.
All-in yields, right?
Yeah, when they say all-in yields high, they buy.
The people on YouTube are lighting up here. One guy's looking at telephone bonds, and he's looking for a coupon like 7%. I don't think you're going to find that with AT&T. But if I go out 30 years, like way out, 3.55%, forget about priced at 68. I mean, is that it's almost like Dan Fuss at Loomis Sales. Can you buy deeply discounted corporate bonds with courage out 20 and 30 years? I don't see it.
No, we're staying away from a longer duration bonds.
Where's your average duration, just as a blended idea?
Yeah, so for our like a flagship, like a core plus strategies, we're probably slightly higher than the benchmark. Call it like a 6.5 year.
So long duration, Paul, is 7 years, 8 years. Our audience doesn't think that way.
No, they think
they want to buy a 20-year piece. The Rhode Island 20-year muni bond. But the pros are at 6 years.
Well, for our multi-sector strategies, but if you're a total return type of investors, we actually recommend you go down to 2 to 3 year part of the curve.
Really?
That's where you get, because there's an inverted yield curve, right?
Yep.
So you're getting higher yields, and also that's where you can find some of the interesting credit spreads in the structured credit space. Some of our shorter duration income funds are yielding, like a 6 and a 7%-ish.
Okay. Very good. Charles, thank you so much for joining us. Charles Tan, he's co-CIO, fixed income for American Century Investments. With our news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Paul, Tom, Lisa. Last-minute preparations are being made ahead of tonight's CNN presidential debate between President Biden and former President Trump. There will be no studio audience, and each candidate's microphone will be muted until it is their turn to speak. We get more with Tina Fordham, founder and geopolitical strategist at Fordham Global Foresight.
So those are two unprecedented changes. Trump, of course, thrives on his studio audience. And that's where there is room for, surprises on the upside and the downside. The cutting off of mics, they both need to keep their cool. Remember, in the last debate, Joe Biden was heard muttering under his breath, "Shut up, man."
Tina Fordham, founder and geopolitical strategist at Fordham Global Foresight. We have special coverage of the CNN presidential debate beginning at 8 p.m. Wall Street time with a special edition of Balance of Power with Joe Matthew and Kaylee Lyons in Washington and David Gura in Atlanta. The Supreme Court has a handful of cases still undecided, including whether former President Donald Trump is immune from criminal prosecution in the election interference case against him. Bloomberg's Amy Morris has a preview.
We're waiting to hear from the High Court about some major undecided cases. Donald Trump argues he has presidential immunity from prosecution for acts taken in office. A former police officer is challenging the obstruction charges brought against hundreds of people who took part in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. And the most significant Supreme Court case in decades on homelessness centers on whether people can be banned from sleeping outdoors when there's not enough shelter space. And there are other cases pending, including on the opioid epidemic, air pollution, and securities fraud. The court releases its findings at 10 this morning. In Washington, Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
The Supreme Court is poised to allow abortions in medical emergencies in Idaho. Bloomberg Law reports that's according to a copy of an opinion that was briefly posted on the court's website. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul, Lisa.
We got to redux the conversation from yesterday, which is Nets-Knicks.
Oh, yeah.
And this is, they did the thing with what is it, Michael Barr? Why are we picking French people in the NBA? It's like a 2-year trend. C'est magnifique.
Well,
it's a global game.
Yeah, it's a 19-year-old young man, and he is, and the Atlanta Hawks picked him up, by the way, I should add.
Yeah.
Is coming out the blocks. Yeah, and he's obviously very talented. He's number one going out of the blocks.
What about LeBron's son? Is it USC?
Oh, Bronny. Yeah.
Not yet drafted.
Not yet drafted. We had the second round today.
Rachel from West Lafayette emails in and goes, "What's it about ninth for the guy 7 feet 8 inches tall or whatever?"
And the zeitgeist is they way overgot this guy. He's not that good. I think he's great. But
excuse me, you're telling Rachel from West Lafayette he's not that good?
No, I think he's great, but the pros say no, which I can't believe.
Huh.
2-time player of the year for college. All he does is score and block shots, and people are telling me he's not going to have an NBA career. I don't get it.
It's an outrage.
Exactly.
Paul knows at page 42 of my agreement, if I don't mention Purdue every 3 days.
Yes.
See ya.
Yep.
Anyways, we're having a lot of fun with the NBA draft. I'm still blown away by the Knicks. Sweeney's tickets next year, Lisa.
Oh, boy.
It's going to be unbelievable. It's like Jack Nicholson level for the Lakers.
He's next to Spike Lee.
Hey, green on the screen. We were red all morning. Green on the screen. The market loves a debate. We'll talk about that next. From New York City, Bloomberg Surveillance.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. We're seeing a little bit of a lift to the markets, and this is after the latest batch of economic data. It kind of reinforced speculation the Fed will be able to cut rates this year to prevent that bigger slowdown. We had continuing claims inch higher. The final estimate of first quarter GP, that was revised slightly higher. Right now, the NASDAQ up 0.3%, 67 points. The Dow, little change, but up 20 points. The S&P 500 up 0.2%, or 11 points. We have the two-year yield, 4.72%, down 3 basis points. The yield on the 10-year, 4.28%, down 4 basis points. We had our shares of Levi Strauss really taking a hit, down 16%. It reported revenue below estimates. And then you have Walgreens also taking a hit, down 23%. It cut its earnings outlook. It's closing more stores. That's also affecting shares of CVS Health. They're down nearly 5%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
YouTube live chat, Paul.
Yeah, lighting up.
Waking up with a surveillance sunrise beach walk in California.
Wow.
Is a great treat, though.
How about that?
That's just sick.
That's what they do out there.
That's the way they roll. What time?
Yeah.
9, 8, 7. It's 6:47 a.m.
Yeah, who's doing that?
Probably the dogs, and they're probably Bill Gross is probably with a megaphone up on the cliff saying, "Get off my beach," whatever. Thank you. Good that you are on the left coast and listening to us in your early morning. We thank everyone out west for their commitment, particularly the pros. They're up at 3 or 4 a.m.
Yeah, sure.
Remember Robertson Stevens in San
Robbie
Francisco
Stevens.
years ago?
Yep.
The day started at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
It was something. On the debate tonight, perfectly timed with Strategas, the Jason Trenner Combine. Jeanette Lowe joins us as well. I think, Jeanette, a lot of people have debate on the brain. I mean, everybody's been covering it nonstop for a week, and particularly as we come up, the CNN's got the countdown clocker going. What's the next debate look like? ABC's supposed to have a debate. Are you even focused on how these two get to the next debate?
Absolutely. So I think one thing that's really important is, everyone's been talking about how early this debate is. That's really a key issue for this election. President Biden asked for the debate to be early. He knows that he is currently losing this election. It is currently a referendum on his first term in office. You see his approval rating hovering around the 40s. That is also indicative of generally what the president will receive in a two-party vote in the re-election. So right now he is losing this race. He is down in the polls to Trump nationally and in the key swing states that are going to decide this election. Right. He needs the debate to actually turn this race from a referendum into a choice between him and Trump. And so for him, this is really kind of a key moment.
Does the president go out tonight and say right at the beginning, I'm talking to one specific audience, swing vote, whatever, so a key state vote, or is he going to try to hit a bunch of different constituencies?
He's probably going to hit a bunch of different constituencies. I think what he does need to do is he definitely needs to try to target Trump, cast Trump in a negative light that then really helps those voters who see the comparison between the Trump administration and the Biden administration feel like they were better off under Trump. Those are the voters he really needs to sway back into his camp in order to win this election. So I think those are the people that he's going to be talking to most this tonight.
Tom, Jeanette is, she's got a lot of experience in this whole politics and how it impacts the markets and things. But she got her start as a undergraduate in political science from the University of Richmond. So she's a fellow University of Richmond Spider.
Yeah.
How about that? Hey, Jeanette, who's got more to lose here in this debate here tonight?
Well, so it's interesting, right? So everyone kind of sets up Biden as setting low expectations for him and then kind of makes it a little bit easier for him to actually cross that bar. You kind of saw that with the State of the Union. And he had a pretty good night that night. And that gave him a little bit of a boost. Didn't last, but a little bit of a boost coming out of that State of the Union address. He does do better in these big events like the debate, maybe the convention. That's where he's really got to have an opportunity to shine because he really doesn't do well on kind of the day-to-day governing campaigning to really win over voters. Trump is also trying to set up low expectations, though, ahead of this debate as well. So I think for Biden, he really needs to use this to change the trajectory of the race. just because right now he looks like he is currently losing, even though I would say the equity market and investors are still giving a 50-50 chance for whoever could win this election. But I think that's really kind of where it's important, is to really kind of show that difference for him. Trump, obviously, though, if he says something tonight, that could actually work in Biden's favor, and he could be the one who actually makes this more of a choice election as well. So they both definitely have things that they need to target to make their case, but then also things that they need to avoid to make sure that it doesn't reflect poorly on them.
And, we have a unique set of kind of, I guess, guide rails here for this debate here tonight. The mics are going to be muted when they're not speaking. There's going to be no audience, live audience here. How did that come about, and who does that favor, do you think?
So in general, these are things that probably Biden was pushing for. So if you look at just kind of the characteristics, all of that, plus having it at CNN generally looks like it might be more beneficial to Biden than for Trump. I think that might be maybe one of the reasons why you are seeing Trump saying that he's kind of saying, Biden could be a really great debater. He's not discounting this debate, things like that nature. But it could also just depend on, again, it's always sometimes body language that matters in a debate. Talking over definitely hurt Trump in the first debate back in 2020. So the mics being muted actually could benefit him to some extent as well. But I think it also just depends on how the two candidates act on stage, and that's up to them.
How important is it? And this has come up a couple times. I'm sure Joe Matthew will bring it up tonight. There's no audience, and we've had some really heated comments, Jeanette Lowe, from people and academics saying this is critical. To you, is it a big deal that there's no audience?
It's important. I think it definitely changes the dynamic, not having, cheering, less interruptions. I actually think it might be good in the sense that if you just want to focus on policy, you're actually just getting policy in this dynamic. And having the mics muted, they kind of did that demonstration where you can still somewhat hear what the other person is saying, or you can at least maybe read their mouth a little bit. But you're not really getting that interruption factor, which then does, I think, actually focus more on what are the two candidates actually trying to say, and maybe it actually could be more substantial this time.
Jeanette, thank you. Jeanette Lowe with Strategas here on the debate tonight. Again, David Gurr in Atlanta, Katie Lines and Joe Matthew. Balance of Power, 8 p.m. tonight. Paul, we haven't said it enough. We're in a bull market.
Yep.
I mean, we started out red on the screen, not a weight to the tape, but, there was some, where's the bid? And the bid came in right on the opening, and 20 minutes in, it's red and green on the screen. But again, there's a bid off of futures.
There is.
I mean, there's just people want to go out there and buy something.
Yeah, I mean, we're up 34% off at October 23 level here, and it's been pretty consistent other than a little bit of a 5% pullback in April of this year. But boy, you look at the chart for the S&P 500, again, up about 33% off that October 2023 level. So,
and the most important conversation of the day, whether you agree or disagree, is Ian Lingdon, BMO Capital Markets. He's saying, he said to Lisa, he said, you're saving so much money at Costco buying 12 dozen eggs that you might as well just load the boat on the 10-year yield. Lisa's got the buy order out.
Yep, we got the 10-year Treasury, Tom, coming in about 5 basis points here, 4.27%. And again, the 2-year yield, Tom, 4.7%. We were getting paid 5% just a couple of weeks ago. Yields certainly coming in here. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Did I hear, did both of you were off today? Tomorrow?
Oh, yes.
Yes, tomorrow.
And get ready for it.
Is it good
it's
weather?
Not just the first time this is going to happen this summer, Tom. I'm just letting you know. There's going to be several, if not more,
You're going to be
Fridays.
on the beach.
See, you go to Colin, you go to Bragg, you say, I'll work the day after Thanksgiving. I'll work Christmas week. But when I come to you for those summer Fridays, I don't want to hear anything. And we kind of worked out a deal.
Joining us, a gentleman, the last time he took a vacation was 1998.
Exactly.
He's almost as old as Joe Mysack, which is
almost.
something.
He's getting
John
there.
Tucker joining us right now for a quick 20 seconds. John, are you going to be here tomorrow? That's what we're quizzing on.
For PCE, of course.
Inflation report.
Would I miss that?
Gotta be.
Goodness gracious.
Now, are
no.
you working tomorrow? Are you Lisa Mateo and Paul Sweeney tomorrow?
No, who am I tomorrow? I am Lisa. No, I am Lisa.
Yes.
Okay.
And then somebody pointed that out, and I said her job wasn't that difficult. And then she got really
We
mad.
quoted you earlier. We had you at the Wawa buying $4 dozen eggs. Thank you. John Tucker bringing you through the rest of the day as well. We're doing protest songs. Jimi Hendrix here on Dylan. Classic. The debate tonight.
Say the joker to the thief. There's too much confusion. I can't get no relief. Businessman there, drink my wine. Plowman